Chapter 212. Report. Just when everyone was still trying to figure out what was going on. Just when they were not sure if the wrath of the heavens would descend again, a scout hurried to Yeshen and knelt on the ground. There was a trace of panic in his voice as he said, "Leader, there is a Ming soldier outside the camp. He said he has a letter for you." "Where is he?" When he heard that a Ming soldier dared to come to the camp, Yeshen's eyes narrowed. A boundless killing intent and anger rose from the bottom of his heart. "He is under the control of our brothers." The scout felt his leader's killing intent and did not even dare to raise his head as he answered. "Kill him." When his trusted aides heard that a Ming soldier was under control, they immediately shouted loudly. It was as if killing the messenger would not be enough to quell the anger in their hearts. "Wait a moment." Yeshen waved his hand lightly. "Let's see what is written in the letter first." Since he dared to come and deliver a letter, he must be someone who dared to die. Even if someone like him was killed, it would not be of much benefit to Walla. It was better to see the other party's intentions first and understand his thoughts before speaking. Walla took the letter and opened it in his hand. Immediately, the vigorous and powerful Chinese characters appeared in his eyes. The letter was written by Yang Qindong himself, and the calligraphy he had been practicing for a while finally came in handy. Leader Yeshen Junjian, this lightning was inevitable because of marquis actions. It is because Walla made such a big fuss and went against the harmony of the heavens. However, the heavens are virtuous. Marquis cannot bear to continue causing suffering and is willing to turn weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk. If you are willing, you can leave the city for a while. On the other hand, if the lightning continues, I am afraid that Walla's army will cease to exist. What choice do you have? Please think thrice before you act. Ming Dynasty's loyal Marquis Yang Qindong. There were not many words, but the purpose of the letter was very clear. According to the letter, the fiery light that could easily kill people was caused by Yang Qindong's actions. If he wanted to prevent such things from happening again, it was very simple. He just needed to leave the city for a while and he would know the requirements. Yeshen didn't answer immediately. Instead, he passed the letter to his trusted aides. After they read it, they immediately gave their opinions. Some people said that they couldn't go out. This must be the trick of the loyal Marquis, in order to trick the leader into going out to look for the killing opportunity. Others said that there was no need to be afraid of Liao Ming. Since they wanted to kill people, then they had to be prepared to be killed in return. Once the two sides met, they would not be far from each other. At that time, Walla's elite cavalry would slaughter everything. When Yeshen heard this, his expression changed again and again. When he saw the messy barracks, as well as the countless injured subordinates, he finally said fiercely, "This leader wants to see what this loyal Marquis has to say. Men, gather 1,000 elite warriors and go out with this leader to meet him." Bringing 1,000 brothers, this was Yeshen's method of self-protection. He must meet with Yang Qindong. Apart from the fact that he didn't want to be hit by the huge power of the cannon, he also wanted to hear what the loyal Marquis had to say. It was easy to select 1,000 elite cavalry from tens of thousands of soldiers. After a while, they were gathered and followed Yeshen out of the camp. 3 miles away from the camp, Yang Qindong stood on a protruding slope and looked into the distance under the protection of Beta Persei, Qiu V's first guard team, and 60 soldiers. "Young master, Yang Wu will be fine, right?" Beta Persei had a rare look of nervousness. When he thought of Yang Wu, who was sent to deliver the letter, his heart was filled with irritation. "Nothing will happen, you have to believe in this young master." Yang Qindong still had a confident look on his face. He believed that since Yeshen could stand out among the Walla generals, he was not a short-sighted person. When two armies fought, they would not kill the messenger, not to mention the threats in the letter. As long as they were not reckless people, they would definitely not do anything to Yang Wu who delivered the letter. Of course, there were exceptions to everything. Beta Persei's worry was not without reason. In order to comfort him, Yang Qindong added, "If Yang Wu and his brothers were injured by the enemy, then this young master will bury the entire Walla army with them. At that time, no one will be left alive." His voice was so indifferent, without the slightest murderous intent or anger. But from this sentence, Beta Persei could clearly hear Yang Qindong's determination. He thought that for the life of one of his brothers, he would bury the entire Walla army with them. Suddenly, he was a little envious of Yang Wu. His own death in exchange for such a spectacular scene, it seemed worth it no matter how he looked at it. This sentence was not only heard by Beta Persei, but also by all the brothers who were protecting Yang Qindong. For some reason, at this moment, they just felt a rush of hot blood in their bodies, making it difficult for them to calm down. It was as if they had to do something. In the midst of this restlessness, a group of troops came from not far away. It was not very clear in the night, but based on their instincts, everyone could feel that there should be a large number of people, at least 10 times more than them. Walla's troops had indeed appeared. At this moment, all the restlessness in the hearts of the Lang Feng's troops disappeared. This was the ability of a veteran of hundreds of battles. No matter what kind of emotions they had, once they entered a state of war, they would always be able to recover their body and mind to their best state in the shortest time possible. Young master, they're here, Yang Wu led the way, and after seeing Yang Qindong, he quickly rode over on his horse. In the process of approaching, the Walla army was considered to be well behaved. No one moved recklessly, and there was no sound of horses neighing. It was so quiet that it seemed like they were elites. Very good, thank you for your hard work, Yang Qindong chuckled, and then Beta Persei led a snow-white horse over from the side. Yang Qindong leaped lightly and landed on the horse. Then, he moved forward. Young master. Yang Qindong's actions caused the Lang Feng's troops behind him to shout in unison. In response, Yang Qindong reined in his horse and stopped. He turned to the crowd and revealed a bright smile, saying, I believe that with all of you here, this young master will definitely be fine, right? No one answered, but they all nodded in unison. Their uniform movements showed the attitude of these Lang Feng's troops. They swore in their hearts that as long as they were still alive, they would never let the sixth young master's personal safety be threatened in the slightest. Ha ha ha. Seeing how confident the Lang Feng's troops were, Yang Qindong could not help but laugh to the sky. Then, he slowly rode forward on his horse and shouted loudly, the Great Ming's loyal marquis wishes to see leader Yeshen. Do you dare to meet him? Why wouldn't I dare? A similar shout came from the other side of the night. Then, a strong horse leaped out of the troops and came forward. The distance between the two parties was less than 3 li. The place where they met was between the two parties. Then, the two stopped 10 steps away from each other. Yeshen leaped out on his horse with a grand aura. Of course, the reason he dared to do so was because he believed that this area was safe. However, he did not know that under the cover of night, the Ghost Shadow Sniper Squad had quickly approached and completely included him in the range of being killed at any time. Yang Qindong and Yeshen looked at each other. When he saw that the other party was looking at him seriously, he smiled and said, as expected of the leader of the Walla. Your boldness is admirable. You're too kind. The loyal marquis is indeed a rising star of the great Ming dynasty. You actually dare to meet me at such a close distance. It can be seen that you are also a bold person. Then, tell me, what is this so-called heavenly lightning all about? Also, don't try to fool me with some nonsense about ghosts and gods. I have lived for so long and I do not believe in such things. I only believe in one thing, and that is myself and my own strength. Yeshen wanted to gain the upper hand by a show of strength. He had killed his way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Only then did he have his current achievements and position. He did not believe that a scholar of the great Ming dynasty who was less than 20 years old and only knew how to read books every day would have any knowledge. As long as he could successfully suppress the other party, it would be easy to get the truth. Once he knew the truth, whether to talk or kill would be completely up to him. To Yang Qindong, it sounded like a joke to him that he was the first to come up and threaten him. If he did not want to keep Yeshen to continue pressuring the great Ming dynasty and create enough space and time for his own development, he was afraid that there would not be this meeting at all. Instead, he would have directly dealt with Yeshen. He had his own plan, so he did not touch Yeshen. But now, this person had other ideas. It was ridiculous to think about it. Looking at Yeshen, who was still pretending to be angry, Yang Chendong shrugged indifferently. Marquis knows how to use divine techniques. If you don't believe me, then it's easy. I can make the thunder reappear in minutes. Do you want to try? She originally thought that she had seen through Yang Chendong's trick, but she didn't expect him to be so calm at this time. Her eyes couldn't help but become a lot colder. Don't try to test this chief's bottom line, or you will regret it. I will regret it, ha ha ha. As if he had heard the biggest joke in the world, Yang Chendong looked up to the sky and roared. Then, he suddenly stopped. Then, his right hand turned into a fist and gently pushed forward. This was a signal to Beta Persei behind him to fire. Beta Persei had been watching the sixth young master's every move. Seeing that he had made his move, he immediately used the radio station to call for Tiger's Mane. Although he stretched out his hand, the thunder that should have appeared did not immediately appear. Yeshen was nervous at first, but his face soon relaxed. Ha ha ha, let's see. Reality will expose all your lies. Boom. A loud noise came out and landed in the barracks behind Yeshen. The Walla tent that had just quieted down was once again filled with cries and shouts. Chapter 213. The smile on Yeshen's face froze in an instant. Then, it became very ugly. The sky thunder killed his loyal warriors. He glared at Yang Chendong and shouted, "What are you doing? Don't you know that we are still negotiating?" Yang Chendong ignored Yeshen's roar. Instead, he grinned and revealed a sinister smile. Then, he switched to his left hand and gestured at the warhorse under Yeshen. As if to coordinate with this gesture, a bullet suddenly flew out from an unknown place and shot into his strong warhorse. The originally strong horse suddenly neighed in pain and fell to its knees with a plop. The sudden movement of the warhorse caught Yeshen off guard. He fell from the warhorse without any warning. Because he was quite skilled, he did not get his face covered in dust. He only staggered a little and his body tilted a little, but he quickly returned to his original state. With a push of his right hand and a tap of his left hand, Yeshen was no longer as unforgiving as before. He became much more obedient. However, the soldiers behind him did not know what happened. When they saw their leader fall from the warhorse, they thought that something bad had happened. Suddenly, 5 strong horses rushed out and leaped straight at him. Fall, all of you. Since he wanted to establish his might, he naturally wouldn't give the other party a chance. Under Yang Chendong's angry roar, the Ghost Shadow Sniper team ambushed behind him took action. The 5 warhorses were locked in an instant. Only half of the way forward, they fell to the ground one by one. With night vision goggles and advanced sniping techniques, Bai Zhua and his team members had complete control of the small battlefield. Above. Seeing that 5 of their own warriors had fallen, the other Vala people were still shouting in disbelief. However, they were the first to react quickly. They turned around and gathered their chi and their dantian, shouting loudly, "All of you, stop. Without my orders, no one is to act rashly. Otherwise, you will be punished by military law." Yeshen was really scared. He was frightened by Yang Chendong's gesture. He could not see what the other party did, but his men died one by one. Could it be that he really knew some kind of magic? Yeshen, who had doubts in his heart, quickly analyzed that Yang Chendong did not mean to kill him. Otherwise, why would he talk so much nonsense? If he pointed at him, wouldn't he die on the ground like the other Walla cavalry? Since he knew that Yang Chendong did not want to kill him, he was calm. First, he stopped his men from acting rashly. Then, when he looked at Yang Chendong, his tone became much gentler. He even asked with a hint of respect, "Tell me, what do you want? I don't think you want to kill me, right?" "That's right." Yang Chendong clapped his hands as if he was praising Yeshen's understanding. However, this slap gave him a fright. He instinctively tensed up his body and prepared to defend himself at any time. It was as if he thought that this slap was some kind of demonic technique. Yang Chendong did not ridicule Yeshen's loss of composure. Instead, he said in a calm tone, "In the eyes of Marquis, your life is the same as the other Walla people's lives. It is not worth a penny more. Therefore, Marquis has no need to kill you. This time, I asked you to come out to talk to you about the Walla army retreating." Retreating? Yeshen was puzzled. Yes, it's retreating. Of course, if you don't retreat, Marquis also has the ability to kill all of you here, just like in the Tuma Castle. Although you have fewer people, you still managed to kill 500,000 soldiers of the Great Ming Dynasty. Yang Chendong knew what the other party was suspecting. It was nothing more than the lack of military strength, so he casually gave an example. As soon as he heard about the Battle of the Tuma Castle, Yeshen's face showed a proud expression, but after he understood what Yang Chendong meant, his face changed instantly. "Do you think you can be like our Walla warriors and win with fewer people? What? Do you think the effect of the heavenly thunder is still not enough? If that's the case, then Marquis doesn't mind a few more." Yang Chendong saw that Yeshen still wanted to get lucky. His face changed immediately, and then he slowly raised his right hand again. This action made Yeshen's expression change. "Wait, I believe you." Yeshen couldn't help but be nervous. The effect of the heavenly thunder was too powerful. A casual strike could kill hundreds and thousands of people. If such a heavenly thunder struck again, he was worried that Walla's morale would be destroyed. If that was the case, how could they still talk about dominating the Great Ming Dynasty? Yeshen finally became obedient, and Yang Chendong naturally withdrew his right hand. "How is it? Do you agree to retreat?" "I agree. This chief will order the entire army to retreat," Yi Xian said in a somewhat dispirited manner. This time, he had come full of confidence, but he returned in disappointment. If it was anyone else, their expression would not be good. No, no, no. Who knew that when Yang Chendong heard that the whole army should retreat, he shook his head. "We have to retreat, but not like this." Marquis remembered correctly. In the Tuma Castle, you should have captured a lot of Ming Dynasty soldiers. Now send them back. If there is one less person, you don't have to go back. What? Are you threatening me? When he heard that Yang Chendong wanted all the captives, Yeshen's expression changed. He widened his eyes, as if he was going to fight for his life. Yang Chendong, who had already controlled the situation, acted as if he didn't see Yeshen's so-called fierce face. "Marquis is threatening you." "What? Are you not convinced? If that's the case, Marquis doesn't mind using the heavenly thunder to destroy you. After that, Marquis will lead the army into Walla. When that time comes, not only will the Great Ming Dynasty's captives be taken back, even the women and children of Walla will become the Great Ming Dynasty's captives. Do you believe me?" Yang Chendong said without showing any weakness. These words were like thousands of needles piercing Yeshen's heart, making him unable to refute. If it was someone else who said this, he might laugh out loud and give the order to kill them. However, these words came from Yang Chendong's mouth. Thinking back to the various actions just now, he was really worried that the other party would do this. In the face of such a powerful heavenly thunder, could the Walla cavalry really withstand it? While Yeshen was still thinking about how to deal with it, Yang Chendong continued to speak. "Marquis only asked you to return the captives. He didn't ask for the gold and silver that you robbed. This is already extra lenient. Furthermore, in Willow Town dozens of miles away, your vanguard army is surrounded by Marquis. If you return the Great Ming Dynasty's captives, Marquis can also let these people go. This is a fair trade. If you don't agree, then there's no need to talk. Marquis will kill you within 3 breaths." After speaking, Yang Chendong gently raised his left hand. This action clearly meant to kill Yeshen. He had already seen the serious consequences of reaching out his left and right hands, so he didn't dare to test the law. He immediately shouted, "Wait, this is such a big matter. No matter what, this chief has to go back and discuss it with his subordinates first. I'm sorry, before all the Great Ming Dynasty's captives are released, you can't leave here." Yang Chendong shook his head and said with a look that said, "Don't play tricks, it's useless to think about it." "Are you going to take me as a hostage?" Yes Hen said very discontentedly when he heard this. It was just that after saying this sentence, he didn't speak anymore. The reality was already like this. Wasn't it too late for him to react now? He couldn't leave, and he couldn't beat him. Reality forced Yes Hen to agree to Yang Chendong's conditions. However, although he agreed, Yes Hen was still a little worried. Would Yang Chendong act shamelessly? Therefore, after hesitating for a while, he raised his head and said, "Loyal Marquis, but I don't know if you will let me go if I release the captives. Also, will you release all the besieged warriors in Walla?" Seeing that Yes Hen also wanted to make a request, Yang Chendong said indifferently, "What? Do you think that other than believing in Marquis, you have the qualifications to negotiate with Marquis? You?" After being said this by Yang Chendong, Yeshen's face changed again and again. It was obvious that he was very angry. Marquis is joking with you. In fact, with your intelligence, you can think about it. If Marquis wanted to kill you, why would he talk nonsense with you? As for the captives of the Great Ming, Marquis can bring his army to kill them after killing all of you. Presumably, Walla doesn't have the strength to stop the Great Ming's army now. However, Marquis didn't do this, which is already a kind of sincerity. As for your people who are besieged in Willow Town, I have to trouble you to send someone to inform them not to try to break out of the encirclement. Tell them to stay here obediently and wait for the results of our negotiation. Naturally, they will be released. During this period, if anyone dares to act rashly, they will only die. Don't blame Marquis for not reminding you." Since he had already said this, Yes Hen had to accept it even if he didn't want to. However, after thinking about it carefully, Yang Chendong didn't seem to have the intention to destroy Walla. Otherwise, he could do it now and Yes Hen wouldn't have the strength to fight back. There was no other choice. Yes Hen was forced by Yang Chendong's strength and finally lowered his head. He turned around and shouted to the army behind him. He called a few fast horse scouts and arranged them to inform the brothers in Willow Town not to act rashly. In addition, they were to inform the captives of the Great Ming army to escort them back to the loyal Marquis. After the order was given, the scouts left. Yang Chendong smiled and waved his hand. The first guard captain, Chiu Vi, brought people to deliver wine and food to Yes Hen. "Leader Walla, the night is long and there are too many things to do. Why don't we drink while waiting?" Yes Hen looked at the wooden table in front of him, as well as the hot food and wine. He was even more surprised in his heart. The loyal Marquis of the Great Ming seemed to have calculated everything and knew that he would compromise. He even prepared wine and food. Well, there was nothing to say. Let's eat first. Chapter 214. Willow Town. After Borromeo met up with General Nai Gong, he tried to charge out a few more times, but they all ended in failure. After many warriors died, the morale of the army began to waver. When faced with the general's order to break out of the encirclement, not many people were willing to go along with it. Charging out despite knowing that they would die wasn't bravery, but recklessness. Everyone only had one life. Who was willing to die so carelessly? As they waited and broke out of the encirclement, the sky gradually began to brighten. It also welcomed the scouts sent out by Yes Hen. When the scouts arrived and said that their leader didn't want them to break out of the encirclement and to wait in Willow Town, the first to disagree was Borromeo. This time, he came with great ambition, but suffered heavy losses time and time again. This made him feel great shame. Seeing that the sky was already bright, the problem that restricted their vision was solved. It was time to charge out, but he was told to stay in place and wait for orders. How could he be willing to accept that? Did my big brother really say that? Does he know that we have already investigated that there are only a few thousand Ming soldiers surrounding us? With our 20,000 soldiers, we can definitely charge out. When that time comes, it will be our time of great victory. Borromeo said to the scouts with a face of unwillingness. Unfortunately, these scouts didn't have any status. They were only here to pass on a message. They couldn't give any reply to Borromeo's words. Seeing that the scouts didn't say anything, Borromeo straightforwardly shook his head. You said that my big brother is facing off against the loyal Marquis, right? That's good. Say, if you suddenly charge out of Willow Town and come behind the loyal Marquis, do you think you can eliminate him with a pincer attack? If that's the case, will there be anyone in the Great Ming Dynasty who dares to oppose the Walla? There shouldn't be anyone. The scouts seemed to have seen some hope as they replied. In reality, the scouts didn't really understand the order this time. However, since their leader had spoken, they had to carry it out. Seeing that the scouts he sent agreed with his suggestion, Borromeo couldn't help but be overjoyed. Good. Since the people sent by Big Brother have agreed, then we will do as this general says. As soon as Borromeo finished speaking, the vanguard general beside him immediately raised a different opinion. We can't do that. The scouts are only there to relay orders. They don't understand the situation on the battlefield at all, so we should listen to the leader. The scouts don't understand the situation on the battlefield, but we do. General Nigong, don't tell me that you've become discouraged and scared after being defeated a few times in one night. You're our Vala's general, you should be brave and fearless. Borromeo said with a mocking smile. After being refuted by Borromeo, the general's expression changed again and again. However, he was not good with words and didn't know what to say. In the end, he simply turned his head away and used his actions instead of his mouth to express himself. If you want to disobey, then go ahead. This general will listen to the leader's orders and stay in Willow Town obediently. There were less than 4,000 soldiers left in the original vanguard army, which did not affect the overall situation. Since it didn't make sense, Borromeo decided to just ignore it. He would just lead the army forward. At that time, he would kill the Great Ming's loyal Marquis and the credit would be his alone. Perhaps it was because he couldn't wait any longer, or perhaps it was because he wanted to make a contribution, that child Borromeo ignored his elder brother's orders and began to gather his troops. Taking advantage of the darkness of the sky, he headed for the western end of Willow Town and made a counterattack. The sky was already bright. Commander Xiao Feng and Commander Wu Sheng, who were in charge of guarding here, could also clearly see some of the situation in Willow Town. With the help of binoculars, they could see even further than the enemy. The Walla soldiers in the town suddenly began to gather. This scene was clearly captured by the two of them and they quickly guessed the enemy's intentions and thoughts. Inform Sir Tiger's man to prepare artillery support at any time. They knew that the Walla cavalry in town outnumbered them by 10 times. For safety reasons, it was also the 6th young master's order to inform Tiger's man to prepare once they discovered something that couldn't be disobeyed. Xiao Feng and Wuxing didn't dare to be careless and quickly made preparations. In less than an hour, the west side of Willow Town suddenly became much more lively. Countless Walla cavalry charged out from here. Borromeo even took the initiative to lead the charge. He wanted to use his actions to inspire the other warriors to charge out of Willow Town and kill the Great Ming's loyal Marquis. They're coming out, they're coming out. Everyone get ready. Inform Sir Tiger's man to prepare artillery support. After seeing countless enemies appear in front of their eyes, Xiao Feng and Wuxing both gave military orders to their own cold front soldiers. At the same time, they used the radio communicator to inform Tiger's man that they could fire. After Tiger's man received Xiao Feng and Wuxing's request for reinforcements, he immediately loaded another FGT 203mm towed cannon that hadn't fired yet. One of the two FGT 203mm towed cannons was aimed at Yeshin's camp, while the other was aimed at Willow Town. At this moment, Tiger's man received the news and used the second cannon to fire. Borromeo was leading tens of thousands of Walla cavalry to charge out of Willow Town. Under his leadership, the morale of the army increased by a lot. Adding on the fact that they had a large number of people, they seemed to have an unstoppable momentum when they charged out of town. However, this seemingly powerful momentum was met with a hail of bullets from Xiao Feng's 1st Company and Wuxing's 4th Company. Over 100 cavalrymen fell to the ground. However, this momentum didn't seem to have any intention of fading. On the contrary, it became more and more intense. With the continuous charge, more and more Walla cavalry fell to the ground. It was to the point that the path forward was blocked by the corpses of the war horses and soldiers. But in the end, because there were too many cavalrymen, they still managed to charge out. Among the crowd, when Borromeo saw that they had made it out of the town, his face lit up with joy. Holding a saber in his hand, he shouted loudly, a bloodthirsty glint in his eyes. He wanted to charge forward and kill all the Ming soldiers who had heavily injured the Walla cavalrymen, letting them know what it meant to overestimate one's abilities. Seeing the Walla army charging out and getting closer and closer to them, the three commanders of the Ming army, Sun Tong, Yang Jie, and Mao Fushou, all had pale faces. Even though they still had 3,000 Ming soldiers under their command, they were all trembling in fear in the face of Walla's army. It looked like they would collapse at any moment. Boom! Just as the Ming army was in chaos and chaos was about to break out at any moment, just as Xiao Feng and Wu Sheng were shooting with all their might with Ling Feng, the enemy was getting closer and closer due to their disadvantage in numbers. Just as it was extremely dangerous, a loud explosion suddenly sounded above their heads. Following that, a cannonball landed in the middle of Walla's army. The cannonball landed right where the Walla cavalry were most concentrated. With just one cannonball, at least 100 Walla cavalry soldiers were killed. As for the number of people who were injured, it was even more uncountable. Unfortunately, Borromeo was in the crowd. His originally ferocious face was directly swallowed by the cannonball. Not even his bones were left. Borromeo died, along with nearly 100 cavalrymen and even more injured people. This cannonball also stunned the advancing Walla cavalry. Before this, they had some understanding of the cannons of the Ming dynasty. However, those cannons could only shoot out a heavy iron ball. The damage it could cause was only in a straight line. As long as they avoided the iron ball that could only attack in a straight line, their lives would not be in danger. How could it be like this cannonball that landed without any warning? Moreover, when it landed, under the flames, its lethality was so great that it gave people the feeling that there was no way to avoid it. The people who were stunned by the cannonball reined in their horses and stopped. Borromeo had died in battle. Without their commander, they felt like they did not know where to go. It was at this time that the second cannonball arrived. It once again landed in the crowd, causing the deaths of hundreds of cavalrymen and the injuries of hundreds of cavalrymen. Retreat. Seeing the soldiers around them being killed by the cannonballs and muskets, the morale that had just been built up instantly collapsed. The smart soldiers knew that if they retreated back to the town, they would not face such danger. In an instant, many of them retreated. This was like a plague that quickly spread. Other than the Walla cavalry at the front who could not turn back and became Lang Feng's target, the rest of the Walla cavalry retreated back to the town. The battle finally ended with the death of nearly 2,000 people. The ground was littered with corpses and the smell of blood. It seemed like this battle was originally a child's play. The army retreated back to the town and Nai Gong took over the command. When he ordered everyone not to leave without orders, he also sent out scouts to inform leader Yeshen of what had happened. The scouts rushed out of the town and rushed in front of Ling Feng and the Ming soldiers with a terrified expression. Their faces were filled with fear, as if they were afraid that they would be killed by these murderous gods. If not for Yang Chendong's orders to allow the scouts to move back and forth, no one would be able to leave this place alive. The scouts rushed all the way and finally met with leader Yeshen. They recounted in detail what had happened in Willow Town. When they mentioned that the child General Borromeo had been killed by the heavenly lightning, they did not even dare to raise their heads. Hearing that another brother had died on the battlefield, Yeshen's expression was naturally very ugly. However, he could not ask Yang Chendong for an explanation. It was his brother who did not listen to orders and took the initiative to fight. Now that he had died, who else could he blame? Forget it. Quickly inform the troops behind to bring all the captives of the Ming army here. Remember, all of them. Do not leave a single one alive. Whoever dares to leave behind the captives of the Ming army, I will leave behind his head. Yeshen, who was really scared by Yang Qindong, did not dare to play any tricks. He issued a strict order to his troops. Chapter 2:15. In the imperial palace, Daizong Zhu Qiyu was pacing back and forth in the throne room. Because he was worried about the battle ahead, he could no longer remain seated on the dragon throne. Standing below were all the fourth-rank officials in the capital and above. They all looked anxious and uneasy, and everyone had a grim expression on their faces. The battle to defend the capital had undoubtedly reached a critical juncture. It would take at least 3 days for the new order to rescue the emperor to arrive at the capital. If the loyal marquis lost to Yeshen, the entire capital would be in danger, and everyone's lives would be in danger. But an entire night had passed, and there had been no report from the front line. How could they not be worried? At this moment, many people began to miss the rule of having eunuchs supervise the army. If there were eunuchs present, they would have already sent someone back to report what had happened on the front line. They would not be like this, where everyone could only passively and anxiously wait. The officials had been here since early in the morning, but there was nothing they could do. Some of the officials were unwilling to wait. Seeing that there was nothing they could do, Minister of War Yi Ming stepped forward with his ceremonial tablet and said, "Your Majesty, should we send someone to the front line to see what the situation is like? No matter what, we have to make preparations early." There were many explanations for what "make preparations early" meant. If they won, they naturally had to make preparations to celebrate. If they lost, they had to make preparations to flee. That's right, that's right. With Yi Ming taking the lead, the other officials quickly responded. One by one, they stood up and spoke to the emperor. How could Zhu Qiyu not want to know the situation on the front line? For this reason, he had sent out many scouts and spies, but not a single one had returned. At this time, he truly didn't know who to send out. On the other hand, great eunuch Jin Ying's eyes turned as he thought of something. He carefully took 2 steps forward and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Your Majesty, we can send the embroidered uniform guard commissioner Hu Zhangming and request that he bring back the news." Hu Zhangming. Zhu Qiyu's brow creased as he began to think about this person. Zhu Qiyu, who had recently spent a lot of time to understand the officials, quickly figured out Hu Zhangming's identity. This person was not only the eldest son of the Minister of Rights, Hu Shao, but more importantly, he was also the father-in-law of the Marquis of Loyalty and Courage, Yang Qindong. The people that had been sent out earlier must have been stopped by Yang Qindong and were not allowed to return. However, if Hu Zhangming were to go and face his father-in-law, he would not be able to stop him. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh at how smart Jin Ying was. He immediately turned around and asked the officials, "Is Minister Hu Zhangming here?" "Your subject is here." When Hu Changning, who was standing behind the officials, heard the emperor's words, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he stepped forward with a board in his hand. When the officials saw that the emperor was calling for Hu Zhangming, they quickly opened up a path so that the guardian of the brocade guard could face the emperor directly. "Beloved Minister Hu, we now order you to bring people to the front lines to understand the situation of the battle, then quickly report back. Remember, you must complete this order as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you will be severely punished." Zhu Qiyu purposely emphasized the word "severely" in order to remind Hu Zhangming that it was his son-in-law who was leading the troops into battle. No one would make things difficult for him unless he wanted to make things difficult for himself. Hu Zhangming naturally understood Zhu Qiyu's meaning. In his heart, he did not want to make things difficult for his son-in-law. However, since he had the emperor's order, he did not dare to disobey. "Your subject obeys the emperor's order. I will definitely go and return quickly." After saying this, Hu Zhangming turned and left the hall. Seeing Hu Zhangming's figure disappear, Zhu Qiyu finally let out a long sigh of relief. Presumably, before long, there would be a report from the front lines. Hopefully, it would be good news. After Hu Zhangming left the palace, he brought along Lieutenant Gao and 2 other Hu family servants and headed straight for the northern side of the capital. Riding at top speed, they arrived at the east side of Willow Town in less than 4 hours. Here, they were stopped by a group of Ming soldiers from the 5 cities warden's office. In this team, there were 2 men in camouflage clothing who looked very energetic. "Who are you? Get off your horse and report your identity." Seeing that there were horses coming from the direction of the capital, the 2 men in camouflage clothing looked at each other and smiled. They had already stopped several groups like this. This was also Yang Chendong's intention. He wanted Zhu Qiyu to understand the cruelty of war and make him worried and afraid. If you wanted to make others afraid of you, it was not as simple as beating them up. Sometimes, raising a stick of pressure and not letting it fall would give people a feeling of intimidation. Seeing the Ming army blocking the road, Hu Zhangning, who was leading the group, knew that this should be the Ming army that was fighting against the Walla. He immediately let out a sigh of relief and reported his name. "This official is the Imperial Guardian of the Embroidered Uniform Guard, Hu Zhangning. Under the Emperor's orders, I have come to investigate the situation of the battle. You only need to report the truth." "What Imperial Guardian? I've never heard of him. Just tie him up as well." The 2 men in camouflage clothing chuckled. In front of them, the so-called Great Ming army did not have the slightest bit of deterrence. After laughing, they ordered the soldiers of the 5 cities warden's office to tie up Hu Zhangning as usual. The Ming army seemed to be used to this kind of thing. They did not even blink as they walked toward Hu Zhangning and the other 3. Although they were Ming soldiers, after witnessing the power of the Cold Guards, they had already submitted to them in their hearts. In addition, they were just carrying out orders. If something happened, they did not have to take any responsibility. There was no need for them to be courteous. They just held the ropes and strode forward. "Wait, what are you doing? Do you know who we are?" Seeing that the Ming army was about to tie up Hu Zhangning, Lieutenant Gao Sheng, who was following by the side, shouted. At the same time, he pulled out the embroidered spring saber at his waist. When they saw Gao Sheng pull out the steel saber, a glint of excitement flashed across the eyes of the 2 Cold Guards. They were afraid that the people who came would not resist. If that happened, they would not be able to use their skills. Now, someone actually wanted to play tricks. This was exactly what they wanted. The 2 Cold Guards held 2 pitch-black and cold 95 styles in their hands. One of them had already aimed his gun at the steel saber in Gao Sheng's hand. He was confident that he could break the saber with one shot. This way, the other party would not be able to resist. "Stop." Hu Zhangning had long heard of the power of the advanced firearms in the mercenaries' hands. He did not want to take the risk. He immediately shouted at Gao Sheng to stop him from acting rashly. At the same time, he looked at the 2 Cold Guards and said, "Where is Yang Chendong? I am his father-in-law." When they heard someone call out the 6th young master's name, the 2 Cold Guards revealed a cold glint in their eyes. It was as if they were about to attack at any time. However, when they heard the next sentence, they were stunned. This person was actually the father-in-law of the 6th young master. If they really offended him, wouldn't they be severely punished later? At that moment, the 2 of them put down the 95 styles in their hands. One of them was still skeptical as he asked, "Are you really Marquis Yang's father-in-law?" Noticing the change in attitude of the 2 mercenaries, Hu Zhangning let out a long sigh and said proudly, "I'm the real deal." "How about this? Call Yang Chendong over and we'll know if it's real or not." "This, please wait for a moment. We'll call the company commander over." The 2 Cold Guards did not dare to act rashly. However, they would not completely believe the other party's words either. They decided to call the company commander, Ting Shan, over and let him determine if it was real or not. Hu Zhangning and the other 3 did not move. They were surrounded by more than 10 Ming Dynasty soldiers. One of the Cold Guards stayed behind and stared at the 4 of them cautiously. From the looks of it, he seemed to be ready to attack at any time. Not long after, Ting Shan, who was also wearing a camouflage uniform but had the insignia of a major, hurried over. Tao Jin, the commander, came with him. As for Commander Gao Li, he stayed behind and was in charge of watching the Walla cavalry in Willow Town to prevent them from making any strange movements. Ting Shan did not know Hu Zhangning. However, he knew that the sixth young master had married Hu Yan as his first wife. This time, he brought Tao Jin over so that he could identify the people. Tao Jin was one of the commanders of the 5 cities warden's office. Naturally, he was familiar with all the noble families in the capital. From afar, when he saw that the person who came was indeed Hu Zhangning, he hurriedly cupped his fist and said politely, "So it's Lord Hu. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Since Tao Jin had said so, how could it be fake? Ting Shan immediately saluted politely and said, "This subordinate is the commander of the 3rd company of mercenaries. Greetings, Lord Hu. This company commander is too polite." Since the other party's attitude was so respectful, Hu Zhangning naturally greeted him with a smile. Then, he asked, "Oh right, why don't I see the loyal Marquis? May I know where he is now?" "Lord Hu, young Marquis is not here. He is meeting with the Walla's leader, Yes Hen, at the front line. I don't know what business you have, but if you must meet with young Marquis, I will have to report it." Ting Shan said politely. He could ignore other people, but in front of Hu Zhangning, he could not put on any airs. Hearing that Yang Qindong was meeting with Yes Hen, Hu Zhangning was shocked and asked, "Meeting? Is there any danger?" "There shouldn't be any danger for now, but I don't know the specific situation." Ting Shan shook his head. It was true that Hu Zhangning was the father-in-law of the 6th young master, but he was not a member of the Yang family, so there was no need for him to explain. He did not know the specific situation of Yang Qindong, but when he thought of the strength of the mercenaries and Yang Qindong's ability to plan ahead, Hu Zhangning was not too worried. "I see, but how is the situation now?" "The emperor is waiting for my reply." I don't know the specific situation. But what I can tell Lord Hu is that the Walla's army has been blocked by us outside Willow Town. They will not threaten the safety of the capital." Ting Shan hesitated for a moment and gave a rough explanation. As for the specific situation, without the authorization of the 6th young master, he would not reveal it. Chapter 216. Although he didn't see Yang Qindong, Ting Shan's answer was enough for Hu Zhangning to go back and report on his mission. A satisfied smile finally appeared on his face. Hu Zhangning quickly returned from the capital. He brought back the information he had gathered from the front line and the scouts he had sent out. He also explained in Ting Shan's words that he had no choice but to detain the scouts to prevent anyone from leaking information about the battlefield. He asked for the emperor's understanding. Zhu Qiyu was indeed a little angry about the scouts being detained. But when he thought about how he still had to rely on Yang Qindong for the front line, how could he take such a small matter to heart? Especially when he heard Hu Zhangning say that the Walla army had been successfully stopped and that the capital was no longer in danger, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief and laughed with joy. Not only Zhu Qiyu, but the other important officials were also very happy when they heard that the capital was no longer in danger. Now, they just had to wait for Yang Qindong's triumphant return. At the front line, a large number of Ming captives were sent over. On the Ming army's side, Deputy Chief Yang Guang came forward with 5,000 cavalrymen and was responsible for escorting the captives back to the capital safely. When accepting the captives, Yang Qindong asked the crowd if there were any captives left in the Walla. After receiving the majority's answer that all the captives had been returned, Yang Qindong breathed a sigh of relief. The number of captives received this time was more than 75,000. Most of them were brave soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles. They were just scared out of their wits before, so they couldn't display their full strength on the battlefield. Yang Qindong could imagine that with these 75,000 captives, the safety of the capital would no longer be a problem. Zhu Qizhen could finally sleep without worry. He had successfully completed the important task of protecting the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty. As for whether these people would be used by Zhu Qiyu to deal with him in the future, Yang Qindong wasn't too worried. Firstly, he had the mercenaries in his hands, so he had to think carefully before making a move. Secondly, these people were all saved by him, so they would have a lot of resistance in their hearts to deal with him. Thirdly, Zhu Qizhen was still in Nanjing, so Dai Zong had to think carefully before making a move against him. With these 3 points, his safety shouldn't be a problem. After dealing with the captives, it was time to release the Walla army and let them leave. This was what worried Yeshen the most. Previously, when he was controlled by someone, he had no choice but to do as Yang Chendong said. Now that the matter was done, would he keep his promise and let's release him and the tens of thousands of Walla cavalry? On this point, Yeshen was a little worried. Everything was as Yang Chendong said before. If he really wanted to deal with the Walla, then he could directly take out a few more cannons from the warehouse. He didn't have to worry about not being able to defeat the Walla, but he didn't do so. He still knew the principle of putting away the bow after the birds are done. If he didn't leave a big enemy for Zhu Qiyu, then when he really wanted to deal with him, he would have no scruples. Therefore, when Yang Chendong released more than 20,000 captives from Willow Town and let them join Yeshen, this person was so moved that he cried out. It was no wonder that he did this. The population of the Walla was not large, and there were even fewer young men who could fight. If all the captives were killed this time, then he would really become a commander without an army. He was afraid that when he returned to the grassland, he wouldn't be able to dominate the grassland, and it would be a miracle if he didn't get bullied by others. Seeing that more than 20,000 cavalry had safely retreated, when he looked at Yang Chendong, Yeshen said in a very admiring tone, "Marquis of the Great Ming, you are a real man. You do what you say, which is admirable. If you are willing, the two of us can join forces. At that time, no one in the Great Ming will be our opponent. At that time, there will be gold, silver, treasures, and beautiful women for us to choose from. Isn't that better?" Yeshen invited sincerely, and Yang Chendong's face showed a smile. "Leader Yeshen, there is not only one Great Ming in the world. There are many countries and ethnic groups in places that we don't know about. Why do you only want to deal with the Great Ming?" Yang Chendong's answer made Yeshen stunned. He didn't expect such an answer. He lowered his head, and after hesitating for a moment, he raised his head and said, "As you said, this world may be very big, but we can't even deal with the Great Ming. How can we talk about other grand plans?" No. Yang Chendong stretched out his right index finger and made a shaking motion. "As the leader of the Walla, you must first have confidence in your captives. With them, you can achieve something. As for why you can't take down the Great Ming, it is because your strength is too weak. There is an old saying in the Central Plains, and I will give it to you here. To forge iron, you must be strong. Without enough strength, you can't achieve anything just by relying on the other party's mistakes. To forge iron, you must be strong." Yeshen thought about this sentence thoughtfully. Yes, that's right. Walla doesn't lack soldiers who are brave enough to risk their lives. Your living environment and conditions made your men very brave at a very young age. On the battlefield, they can gallop everywhere. But do you know why they still failed? Yang Chendong nodded and guided Yeshen. Why did they fail? This question was also what Yeshen wanted to ask. Because your own ability to produce blood is insufficient. If you rely on robbing, this kind of ethnic group is destined to not go far. Yang Chendong chuckled and continued, "You lack all kinds of resources. You are complacent when you get something, and your ambition is satisfied. Since you are satisfied, you are not far away from the days when you lose. This is why although the Walla army is brave and can do some earth-shattering things from time to time, it can't escape the fate of being destroyed and replaced by others. In the end, it is because you can't win the hearts of the people. The reason you can't win the hearts of the people is because the people are not rich. They follow you, but in the end, they can't even fill their stomachs. Who would really risk their lives? On the other hand, if the country is rich and the people are strong, it means that someone wants to deal with you. In order to ensure the fruits of their victory, they have no choice but to take out their weapons and fight with their lives. One is spontaneous, the other is forced. Tell me, which one is more effective? Rich and the people are strong?" Yeshen was shocked by Yang Chendong's words. It was not that he didn't think about some things here, but he didn't know how to do it. Now that Yang Qindong brought up this problem, he should have a solution. Yes, Hen said excitedly. The Ming Dynasty's loyal marquis, but I don't know if there is a way to solve this problem. Of course there is. That is to develop commerce. The grassland is only rich in livestock. The natural environment makes you have a great demand for many other things. If they could start a business, then not only could they be self-sufficient, they could also sell their surplus to other places and earn a profit from the difference in price. They could also trade with people from other regions for things they needed. In short, they could earn more money, and gradually, Tile would become stronger. Once you have money, you will be able to do a lot of things. At that time, it will be much easier for you to expand again. Whether it is money or cavalry, you will be in an invincible position. When Yang Qindong said this, he seemed to have seen some kind of result. His face was full of excitement. At that time, the Tatars will not be a stumbling block for your expansion. On the contrary, they will become your base, the base of talent reserves. When you need soldiers, you can use a lot of gold and silver to make them work for you. In the north of your country, there is a country called Tsarist Russia. I think you should more or less know about it. That country is vast and rich in resources. Its area is much larger than the Ming Dynasty, but its population is very small. That is the place you need to conquer. Remember Genghis Khan? Don't you want to be like your ancestors? A majestic strategic map was placed in front of Yeshen. After Yang Qindong said this, his heart was suddenly moved. It was like a person in the dark who saw the light, a person in a desperate situation who saw hope. It made Yeshen feel like he was reborn. Can we really do this? When he returned to reality, Yeshen said with some uncertainty. Why can't we do it? The reason why the Ming Dynasty has such a vast land and the prosperity of the people is the result of trade. If this is the case, why can't the Walla do it? Yang Qindong did not answer directly. Instead, he asked Yeshen a question in a rhetorical way. Yeshen could not answer this question, but he could continue to ask questions. So, does the loyal marquis want the Walla and the Ming Dynasty to stop attacking each other and resume trade? No. Yang Qindong shook his head. It is to establish trade with marquis. This time, I'll be the one providing you with the goods. It won't be as simple as before, where I'll set up a horse farm to exchange for the goods you need with the Central Plains people. Instead, you will use silver to buy the goods I provide at a low price. Finally, through your hands, you will sell them at a high price. At that time, you will find that doing this will allow you to earn more silver. Then, you will be able to buy more things and do more things. In the end, Yang Qindong revealed his purpose. At the end of the day, Yang Qindong wanted to sell his goods and earn more silver to develop himself. At the same time, he wanted to increase his reputation. If he were to do the business himself, the speed would be too slow and the risk would be too great. If he really sent the Leng Feng to protect him, he did not know how much manpower he would have to put in. This was not proportional to what he would gain. At least for now, there were not many Leng Feng, so he could not split himself up. Chapter 217. But if he could convince Yeshen, then it would be different. The current Walla was equivalent to the king of the grassland, and very few people dared to provoke them. If they were the ones who transported the goods, perhaps some of the profits would be shared by the other party, but compared to what he earned, it was already a lot. With the help of Walla, he could sell things to the Eurasian continent, which was equivalent to stretching out his tentacles one step ahead. This would play a very positive role in conquering, ruling, and occupying that place in the future. This was Yang Qindong's real goal. Yeshen was indeed smart and cunning. But when facing Yang Qindong, these characteristics of his were useless. They were not on the same level at all. Whether it was thinking, knowledge, or martial strength, they were all on a completely different level. How could he be Yang Qindong's opponent? At this time, Yeshen not only did not know Yang Qindong's ultimate goal, but he was also attracted by the other party's idea of strengthening himself through trade. He was not short of money. This time, after defeating Yingzong, he seized a lot of gold and silver, which completely had the foundation to trade with Yang Qindong. Now what he had to consider was whether the bold and loyal Marquis' words could be trusted, and why did the other party take the initiative to help him? Did he want to see the emergence of a powerful neighbor? If he couldn't figure this out, Walla didn't dare to make any decisions. "Why are you helping me?" Yes Hen finally asked, which meant that he was seriously considering his own opinion. Yang Qindong was happy in his heart, but he didn't show the slightest expression on his face. On the contrary, he showed a seemingly very heavy expression and said, "Marquis is from the Great Ming Dynasty, and my relatives and friends are here. Marquis really doesn't want to see them get hurt. As long as Walla doesn't invade, a lot of people can live. So Marquis wants to find a way out for you, a way out that doesn't invade the Great Ming Dynasty and can develop yourself." Yes Hen couldn't help but nod his head when he heard such a high-sounding reason. Obviously, as a Walla, he did not want his people to be invaded by other countries. Of course, Marquis liked silver very much. With money, he could do more of the things he liked. Since trading with Walla can guarantee Marquis' interests, why not? Yang Qindong offered another reason while Yes Hen was still deep in thought. Compared to the first reason, the second reason was much more practical. It also made Yang Qindong look more like an ordinary person. Ha ha ha. Hearing that, he burst into laughter. Obviously, this second reason was more persuasive and moved him. Because of this, he chose to believe in Yang Qindong. His loud laughter set the tone for the trade between the two sides. Then, they each put forward some requirements and conditions. For example, Yeshen's requirement was that the things Yang Qindong provided must be easy to sell and practical. If it was flashy, they had the right to refuse. Also, they could choose not to attack the Great Ming Dynasty, but if the Great Ming Dynasty took the initiative to find trouble with them, then they could not blame him for fighting back. Yang Qindong naturally agreed to Yeshen's requirements. But at the same time, he also put forward his own requirements. For example, after the goods arrived, they had to pay immediately. They were not allowed to owe anything. This was the basic integrity of a businessman. Also, he did not allow anyone from Walla to have any ideas about his goods and caravan. Not only that, they also had the responsibility and obligation to ensure the safety of the caravan. If the goods were intercepted and the Walla could not give an explanation, then he would use the heavenly thunder again. At that time, it would not be as simple as exchanging captives. It could be imagined that under the irresistible heavenly thunder, it was unknown whether the Walla could survive. Each side put forward their own requirements, and in the end, the Economic Association came to a consensus. With this matter settled, Yes Hen excitedly left. Yang Qindong also turned and returned to the capital of the Great Ming Dynasty. More than 70,000 Great Ming captives had been rescued. This would allow many broken families to be reunited. And all of this was because of Yang Qindong. On the way back, news of this matter would spread, causing these people to thank the loyalty Marquis from the bottom of their hearts. This great hero who had saved them from fire and water, their great benefactor. The capital of the Great Ming Dynasty. The 12 city gates were opened, and the news spread to the capital. When the common people learned that more than 70,000 of their loved ones had been rescued, the streets were packed with people. They wanted to see if the rumors were true. And they also wanted to find their loved ones in the crowd. The first to enter the city were the soldiers of the 5 cities' warden's office. A total of 5,000 people, all of them holding their heads high and puffing out their chests, appeared to be in high spirits. In the past, they had played the role of maintaining law and order in the city. Most of the time, they were the thugs of some privileged classes and nobles, helping them bully the common people. It could be said that they were hated by the common people. But this time, it was completely different. He was returning to the city as a hero. Naturally, the welcome he received was extremely sincere and warm. When they saw the people on both sides of the road sincerely welcoming them, the soldiers of the 5 cities' warden's office were also moved. They suddenly realized that being a good person was far better than being a thug for evil people. After the soldiers of the 5 cities' warden's office entered the city, Yang Guang's 5,000 cavalry followed. In this battle, they did not fight a single battle with the Walla cavalry. They only used a single blade to obtain a complete victory. While obtaining military merits, each of them, like the officials of the 5 cities' warden's office, received some silver from the loyalty marquee. Ordinary soldiers received at least 10 taels of silver. The higher the official rank, the more they received. This kind of good job of obtaining both silver and merit made the 5,000 cavalry sincerely grateful to Yang Chendong. If not for the loyalty marquee, it was likely that they would not have been able to defend the capital and survive this time. After the 5,000 elite cavalry, it was the 75,000 Ming soldiers that entered the city. As soon as these people appeared, they were shocked. The scene became a little chaotic. There were too many people who saw their family members. Some saw their sons, some saw their husbands, and some saw their fathers. Immediately, there were waves of crying and shouting. Today was a day worth remembering for the capital. It was a day of triumphant return after winning the battle. It was also a day of joy and joy. Moreover, it was a day filled with cries of joy mixed with cries of joy. On the gate tower of the imperial city, Daizong Zhu Qiyu was standing there with the civil and military officials, watching the performance of the people in the city, watching the victorious army return to camp. There was a relaxed smile on everyone's face. Especially Daizong Zhu Qiyu. Ever since he ascended the throne, Walla was like a sharp sword hanging over his head, as if it would fall and stab him at any time. Because of this, he could not sleep at night and could not eat. It was as if he was afraid that one day he would be defeated like his brother, Daizong Zhu Qizhen. Now, Walla had retreated, and it was a very happy retreat. The battle report from the front said that they were retreating quickly. It was clear that they wanted to retreat to Walla's territory and did not want to be entangled with the great Ming Empire anymore. Being able to retreat was already very difficult, let alone being able to retreat so cleanly and cleanly. This was extremely rare. This also showed how powerful Yang Chendong was. There were also battle reports that this time, the Great Ming Empire sent out more than 10,000 people and returned with no casualties. On the contrary, Walla's army suffered heavy losses. Even their leader, Yeshen's younger brother, Bai Luo Mao, was killed on the battlefield. To be able to obtain such a great victory with almost no losses, this loyalty marquee must be a very formidable commander. While Zhu Qiyu was sighing at Yang Chendong's godlike leadership, he was also thinking about how to reward him. He won the battle, solved the threat in the capital, saved more than 70,000 captives, and brought peace to the great Ming Empire. If he did not reward him for all these things, it was obviously impossible. The officials would not agree, the army would not agree, and the people would not agree. But what should he reward him for? After all, Yang Chendong was not even 20 years old, but he was already the loyal marquis of the Great Ming Empire. This had not happened even when the Great Ming Empire was founded. If he was rewarded, his official position would be too high. Would his achievements be greater than that of the town lord? Zhu Qiyu's throne could not be said to be completely stable. He could not be looking for a powerful imaginary enemy for himself, right? Your Majesty, the Minister of War, Yiming, the Minister of Revenue, Jin Lian, and the Minister of Works, Shi Pu, have memorials. Just as Zhu Qiyu was thinking about Yang Chendong, head eunuch Jin Ning placed a memorial in front of him. What is this? Zhu Qiyu asked casually. He reached out to take the memorial and opened it. As soon as he read it, his eyes lit up and he nodded repeatedly. It was really like a pillow being sent to him when he was sleepy. This was a memorial that the officials had recommended to reward the loyal marquis. It said that Yang Chendong can be rewarded with the title of loyal marquis. His fief will be 5,000 mu of grain fields around the Yang family's old residence in Jianghu Prefecture. This was a diversion of disaster. The so-called loyal marquis was nothing more than a title that represented his high rank. But that was it. Just like Duke Zhangfu in the past, even though he was an official, he was still bullied and humiliated by eunuchs without daring to speak up. But no matter what, after being bestowed the title of Duke, it would represent the emperor's regard for Yang Qindong. Presumably, this would be able to shut the mouths of the people in the world. As for the fief, it would be given to Jianghu Prefecture. That place could now be considered Zhu Qizhen's territory. Intentionally luring Yang Qindong, there was indeed the intention of getting rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. But how could it not be a diversion of disaster? For this reason, Zhu Qizhen would probably be hopping mad. Chapter 218. It could be said that this memorial was very much in line with Zhu Qiyu's thoughts. He immediately approved the memorial. Using the red pen that Jining had prepared, he approved it and the matter was settled. It was worth mentioning that Zhu Qiyu had originally wanted to announce the edict in front of all the officials. However, Yang Qindong did not appear after winning the battle. Perhaps he wanted to keep a low profile. However, no one knew that he did not want to see Zhu Qiyu. Otherwise, he would have to kneel and kowtow. With his current strength, there was no need for him to be so humble. Yang Qindong did not come to see the emperor. The imperial edict had to be announced by someone else. It just so happened that Jining had some matters to discuss with him. She accepted the task and brought a group of embroidered uniform guards and young eunuchs to Yang Manor. The battle was over. Yang Qindong's goal had been achieved. Because of this, they were fortunate enough to follow the sixth young master to Yang Manor. By the time Jining arrived, everyone was having a meal. When Yang Si, who was in charge of guarding, saw that it was Jining and the others, he quickly reported the situation to Yang Qindong. "They're here so quickly." Yang Qindong, who was drinking wine and eating meat with Leng Feng and the others, chuckled. He casually waved his hand and said, "Then why don't we invite them here to announce the edict?" "Here?" A trace of worry flashed through Yang Si's eyes. Like a shadow, Tiger Vmain, who followed beside Yang Qindong, knew what Yang Si was worried about. It was none other than Leng Feng. If they saw that their sixth young master had to kneel to someone else, it was inevitable that they would not be able to accept it and cause trouble. In fact, how could he not have such worries? However, since this was the sixth young master's intention, there was no room for doubt. He immediately glared at Yang Si and said, "If the young master tells you to go, then go. Why are you being so long-winded?" "Yes." Yang Si saw that Tiger's mane was angry. It was said that they were usually under this person's management. After a trace of panic appeared on his face, he agreed and left. Yang Qindong patted Tiger's man's shoulder and gave him a look of approval and relief. Then, he continued to drink with Leng Feng, Xiao Feng, Ting Shan, Wu Sheng, and the other company commanders as if he hadn't heard anything. Not long after, Jining arrived. Along with him were 4 eunuchs and 8 masters of the embroidered uniform guards. Usually, when a eunuch went to an official's house to deliver an edict, as the recipient of the edict, they had to prepare an incense table in advance in order to show their seriousness. Some even had to burn incense and bathe in the ceremony. But today, there was nothing prepared. Yang Qindong was still wearing his casual and elegant green robes. He didn't wear his official robes, and the incense table wasn't set up. When Jining saw this, she couldn't help but frown. But it was only a slight frown, and she quickly relaxed. It wasn't for any other reason than the fact that the Yang family square was filled with mercenary soldiers in camouflage uniforms. Although there were only 400 of them, their combat power was unimaginable. Even defeating Walla had been done with the help of their powerful strength. Against such people, Jining had no chance of winning at all. It wasn't just him. Even the 8 masters of the embroidered uniform guards that he'd brought with him were on full alert. It wasn't that they were dissatisfied with Yang Qindong's lack of preparation before receiving the edict, but they were worried that these mercenaries would suddenly go on a rampage and hurt them. "Oh, it's eunuch Jean. Come, have a drink with Marquis and the other meritorious officials." As soon as Jining appeared, Yang Qindong secretly observed her reaction. He found that she was indeed a little displeased, but she quickly suppressed her displeasure. Yang Qindong smiled inwardly. He wanted to use this method to remind him that he wasn't an ordinary marquise. there were some rules that couldn't be applied to him. If something went wrong and he went on a rampage, everyone's face would be ruined. Yang Qindong greeted Jining as if he were drunk. Jining couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. He wanted to scold Yang Qindong for not following the rules, but he didn't dare do so in front of all the mercenaries. He could only comfort himself. They had just won a great battle, so it was only right that they celebrate together. There was no need to argue with someone who was drunk. Loyal Marquise, the Emperor has an edict for you. Please kneel and receive it, Jining said with a fake smile. He didn't directly respond to Yang Qindong's invitation to drink. Subconsciously, he seemed to be saying, we aren't on the same side, so there's no need for us to drink together. Oh. There's another imperial decree, but His Majesty is going to reward this marquis again. Ha ha ha. Since he was drunk, it was not a problem for him to act a little wild. He immediately laughed and stood up. Perhaps it was because he had drunk too much, but when he stood up, he almost lost his balance. If not for Hu Mang, who was standing at the side, who was prepared and supported him, he would have fallen to the ground in an embarrassing manner. I, Yang Qindong, accept the edict. Yang Qindong shrugged his shoulders and shook off Hu Mang's arm that was on his body. With a plop, he fell to the ground, giving people the feeling that he was prostrating himself on the ground. Because of Jin Ying's appearance, all the mercenaries in the courtyard had stopped drinking and eating. The atmosphere had become much colder. But now, Yang Qindong had suddenly fallen to the ground and knelt to receive the edict. All the mercenaries stared coldly at Jin Ying and the other mercenaries. 10,000 swords piercing the heart was nothing more than this. At this moment, Jin Ying felt cold all over. It was as if he was walking in the snow without wearing anything. No. It was colder than that. It was a coldness that seeped into his bones. Jin Ying couldn't imagine why these mercenaries gave him such a terrifying feeling. Even as he panicked, he opened the Golden Dragon Edict with trembling hands. He read out the edict of acting patriarch Zhu Qizhen rewarding Yang Qindong with the title of Duke of Loyalty. This was a rare moment when he was absent-minded while reading an edict. But at this moment, Jin Ying was really afraid. When he read the edict, he stuttered. He finally finished reading the edict. But when he looked at Yang Qindong, his lips were slanted and he was snoring softly. It seemed that he had fallen asleep. Jin Ying didn't dare to be angry. Instead, he leaned forward with a gentle expression and said softly, Duke of Loyalty, wake up. Wake up. Ah. I've finished reading the edict. Thank you, Your Majesty. Yang Qindong seemed to have been startled awake. He opened his eyes and spoke. Then, he rubbed his eyes and said to Jin Ying, You've worked hard, eunuch Jin. How about this? Please enter the hall and rest for a while. After Marquis has bathed, we can sit down together. Jin Ying had come here to have a good chat with Yang Qindong. Of course, he wouldn't refuse this opportunity. But he was very worried about whether Yang Qindong's mind was still clear. But no matter what, he had to agree. He noticed from the corner of his eye that the 400 mercenaries had already stood up and were looking at him with hostility. He couldn't guarantee that if he continued to stay here, he wouldn't be torn apart and eaten alive by these mercenaries. For his own safety, of course, entering the Yang family manor was the best choice. Okay. Since Duke of Loyalty is so kind, it would be impolite for me to refuse. With that, Jin Ying followed Beta Persei into the outer courtyard of the Yang family manor. Yang Qindong left with them. But he was heading towards the inner courtyard of the inner courtyard. He really did bathe and change his clothes. Just as Yang Qindong, Jin Ying, and the others left, someone among the 400 mercenaries shouted, How can we allow others to blaspheme the 6th young master? We're going to seek justice from Emperor Ming. That's right. We want justice. In an instant, the anger in the hearts of many mercenaries was ignited. In their eyes, the 6th young master was a godlike existence. How could he kneel to others? When such a blasphemous thing happened, it naturally caused the crowd to be furious. It wasn't just the 400 mercenaries. Even Leng Song, Xiao Feng, and the other battalion commanders were furious. They looked like they would explode at any moment and cause trouble for Emperor Ming. Enough. Everyone, sit down. A loud roar came from Hu Mang's mouth. This time, he didn't leave with Yang Qindong. He had stayed behind to stabilize the situation. Even though the two of them hadn't communicated before. But after interacting with each other for so long, they already had a tacit understanding. When Yang Qindong left just now, he had given him an inconspicuous look, which made Tiger's Man understand what to do next. With Tiger's Man's shout, all the mercenaries' gazes fell on him. But when they saw Chief Tiger's body tremble, the anger in their hearts seemed to have been extinguished. But because they were angry, they didn't sit down immediately. What? If you don't listen to me, that means you don't listen to the sixth young master. Don't tell me you want to leave Cold Edge. Very well, if anyone wants to do that, step forward. I can do as you wish right now. Seeing that none of the mercenaries, including Leng Song and the other battalion commanders, sat down, Tiger's Man's eyes narrowed into slits. His anger was obvious. When they heard that they were going to be kicked out of Cold Edge, everyone's morale instantly dropped. Ever since they joined Cold Edge, there was a saying that followed them. Once in Cold Edge, always in Cold Edge. This was an honorable title that no one else had the right to take away. Unless they had committed a grave mistake, they wouldn't be kicked out of the meeting. But this someone else did not include the founder of Cold Edge, Yang Qindong, or the former head instructor, the current chief of the security bureau, Tiger's Man. Everyone who joined Cold Edge knew of the sixth young master, Yang Qindong. Similarly, there weren't many who didn't know of Chief Tiger's Man. It could be said that in the entire Yang Xianu army, if Yang Qindong was the Nan Boan, then the second place would definitely be Tiger's Man. This position was hard to replace, no matter how many contributions others made. For example, the only army commander, Leng Song, would feel inferior when he saw Tiger's Man. Chapter 219. Now, Hu Mang had spoken, and he was speaking with Leng Feng's qualifications and identity. How could the others dare to disagree? They immediately returned to their original stools with a rustling sound. Everyone quieted down, and Tiger's Mane's eyes revealed a satisfied expression. I know that you are very dissatisfied with Ming Emperor's actions towards the sixth young master. But please remember, why did the sixth young master do this? Isn't it to create more time for you to develop? Everyone was originally from the great Ming dynasty. To you, many of your relatives and friends live on this land. If the sixth young master did not compromise and chose to go to war with the Ming army, who knows how many innocent souls would have been implicated and died? Among them might have been your relatives and friends. If that was the case, is this an outcome that you want to see? Tiger's Mane asked the crowd in a powerful and resonant voice. Of course not. I think that no one wants to see their own people fight against their own people. In order to give us more time to develop, and in order to let more of the great Ming dynasty's people and Han descendants suffer less from the chaos of war, the sixth young master has been dealing with the Ming emperor in the capital. This is an act of sacrificing one's own family for the sake of everyone. I hope that everyone can understand. I also hope that today's matter will serve as a warning to all of you and give you a sense of urgency. If we can strengthen our strength earlier, then the sixth young master can avoid this punishment. Do you understand? Yes. Another uniform sound rang out, causing the ground of the entire courtyard to tremble. Very good, now let's continue eating. Tiger's Mane saw that he did not disappoint the sixth young master and spoke of the sixth young master's good intentions. He could not help but inwardly sigh in relief, and then threw a glance at Commander Leng Song. Leng Song immediately expressed his understanding. With his cooperation with the 3 battalion commanders, the atmosphere in the courtyard became lively again. However, although everyone did not say anything else, they all felt a surge of energy in their hearts. That was to perform better so that the sixth young master could have the right to speak to Emperor Ming as an equal. In the side hall of the outer residence of the Yang family manor, Jining had just sat down when a loud roar came from outside the door, giving her a fright. Originally nervous, he immediately stood up. From the looks of it, he was ready to run away at any moment. On the other hand, Beta Persei, who was in charge of leading the way, did not panic at all when he heard the shouts outside. When he saw how nervous Jining was, he said nonchalantly, "It's fine. It's just a ritual for mercenaries to eat. You won't find it strange after hearing it so many times." Beta Persei's explanation made Jinning's body slowly relax. So that's how it is. This is really a strange rule. Ha ha ha, what kind of strange behavior is this? Yang Qindong, who had changed into a new green robe, strode in from the main entrance. At that moment, he didn't look drunk at all. Instead, he looked extremely spirited and sober. However, at this moment, Jining did not care so much. Since the decree had been announced, was there a need to hold on to the past and not let it go? Seeing Yang Qindong walk over, Jining laughed and stood up. "Congratulations, Duke of Loyalty." In the future, I can also call myself Duke of Loyalty, right? Yang Qindong laughed heartily as he walked to the main seat in the side hall and sat down. When he sat down, he pointed to the first seat on the left and said to Jining, "Eunuch Jin, you don't have to be so polite. Take a seat too." This action immediately caused Jinning's displeasure. Although he was only a eunuch, he was the head eunuch. However, he was the head of the eunuchs, the favorite of the emperor, and held great power in his hands. Usually, when he was with the other important officials, he would always be the first to sit before the others. At the very least, everyone had to be seated at the same time. This order of seating was not to be underestimated. It often represented the level of one's status. This was very particular. However, at this moment, Yang Qindong actually sat down first before allowing Jining to sit down. He did not even say a word of invitation. The dominance of the landlord was as clear as day. Jining was extremely displeased and looked around. When he noticed that there were only Yang Qindong and Beta Persei in the room, he thought that it would not be a loss of face if no one else saw him. Thus, he suppressed the anger in his heart and slowly sat down. Yang Qindong had deliberately neglected Jining in order to suppress the other party's power. Now, it seemed that everything was going smoothly. With a certain amount of authority, Yang Qindong began to negotiate with Jining. Although it was called a negotiation, it was actually a fight for benefits. According to his original plan, Yang Qindong proposed 3 conditions. First, the Yang family bank would officially open for business. After the capital, it would be promoted to the other major cities nearby. The imperial court would not be able to stop him, nor would it play any dirty tricks. In short, in the future, Yang Qindong would be a businessman, and a great one at that. If no one provoked him, he would not use his power to oppress others. Second, for his own personal safety. Of the 400 mercenaries, 200 would be left behind. 100 would be in the Yang family village and 100 would be in the capital to ensure the safety of the immortal abode, heaven beyond heaven, and the Yang family bank. In the future, he would decide according to the situation whether or not to continue hiring mercenaries. On this point, Yang Qindong showed that he was rich and imposing. Third, Yang Qindong would not attend court, nor would he participate in court politics. He would also not participate in the matters between Daizong and Yingzong. He wanted to become a third party with a transcendent status. As for these 3 conditions, Daizong had already agreed to the first condition and had even said that he would deposit 500,000 taels of silver into the Yang family bank. There was no need to discuss it further. Jining agreed immediately. As for the second condition, he could not doubt it either. The other party had money and could hire mercenaries, which could only make others envious. It was on the third condition that Jining was dissatisfied with. She made a request on behalf of Daizong. That was, since he was the Duke of Loyalty and Courage, he should be on the side of Daizong. I saved Yingzong's life. It is impossible for me to completely cut off my relationship with him. Dai Zong has also treated me well. It is already not easy for him to not help either side. There is no need to say anything else. Yang Qindong shook his head and spoke with a resolute attitude. Jining could see that Yang Qindong had no intention of backing down on these three conditions. After hesitating for a moment, she thought about how Walla had already retreated and did not need Yang Qindong to act for the time being. Since that was the case, not helping either side was not a bad choice. There was no harm in agreeing. But if she agreed, Jining also raised three conditions. First, they would not help either side. Yang Qindong was only the Duke of Loyalty and had no other authority. Even his previous position as the commander of the embroidered uniform guards had to be removed. Since he was going to retire, he might as well retire completely. Second, Yang Qindong was not allowed to interfere with Dai Zong's relationship with the mercenaries. Jining was very clear on this issue. He even said that he already knew that the Duke of Loyalty and the leader of the mercenaries had a good relationship. Jining thought that after she said all this, Yang Qindong would at least look embarrassed and would even give an explanation. Unexpectedly, young Master Yang had no intention of speaking at all. Instead, he continued. Let's talk about the third condition. The reason Yang Qindong did not care so much was naturally because he had purposely revealed everything that Jining knew. Based on the fact that he had a good relationship with the leader of the mercenaries, it was clear that Jining was ignorant. In reality, it was not just a good relationship. They were the same person. Alright, the third condition is that since you are a merchant, you have to pay business taxes. This is also a matter of course. Of course, the Great Ming Army and embroidered uniform guards who have received the money will also protect the Yang family's business. Jin Ying's face was full of smiles. She seemed to be saying that if you pay taxes, you will naturally be protected. If you don't pay taxes, then sorry, but don't come looking for us when someone causes trouble. Yang Qindong had already considered the matter of paying taxes. He had even thought of a countermeasure. However, since Jining had brought it up, he still had to fight for the rights and benefits. Oh, then how does eunuch Jin intend to collect the taxes? The Great Ming's laws require that agriculture be taxed at a 30:1 ratio, Jining said in a probing tone. This was the result of a discussion with the Minister of Revenue, Jin Lian, the Minister of War, Yiming, and the Minister of Works, Sherpu. The three ministers all agreed that if they wanted to curb Yang Qindong's development, they had to collect business taxes. In this way, not only could they obtain a large amount of money to fill the national treasury, but they could also hinder Yang Qindong's development. In the Grand Great Ming, there was actually someone who could earn money faster than the country. If they didn't use any methods to restrain him, it would be incredible. That's impossible. Yang Qindong shook his head straightforwardly. I will not accept a 30:1 ratio. Yang Qindong's reply was so straightforward that it immediately checkmated Jining. His face was first filled with anger, angry that Yang Qindong's attitude was so resolute. But when he thought of the benefits that could be obtained from this matter, he immediately said, fine, then I don't know what the Duke of Zhongdan's opinion is, how much business tax should be collected. Yang Qindong appeared to be deep in thought as he said, although the laws of the Great Ming don't stipulate it, in reality, the rich and powerful don't have to pay taxes when they do business. It's just like how scholars don't have to pay taxes when they farm. Right now, you want to collect business tax from me. No matter how much you pay, it's not appropriate, right? How could Jining not understand the logic behind this? However, who told other people to do business and farm to support their families, but Yang Qindong was using this to develop his power? For example, the mercenaries he had hired were 200 people. According to the standard rate, it would cost 2 million taels to hire them. Looking at the entire Great Ming, there was probably no one else other than Yang Qindong who could take out this amount of money so easily. Even the imperial family would feel heartache if they took out this amount of money. Chapter 220. Since he had made his business so big, what was the big deal about collecting a little tax? It's not the same. Jining said, aggrieved. How is it different? Yang Qindong didn't seem to notice Jin Ying's aggrieved expression. Instead, he fiercely retorted, could it be that because this guild is making money, you want to collect taxes from me? Could it be that because I did so much to protect the capital, you want to collect taxes from me? If that's the case, there's no way you can justify it, right? Then I, Yang Bao, have no choice but to ask the people of the world, where is justice? Where was Yang Bao's justice? Jin Ying's entire body trembled, his expression ugly. Only now did he realize that Wang Jun still had a powerful tool in his hands. Normally, even if the emperor's decree was announced to the world, it would still take time for the common people to learn of it. But Yang Bao was different. Wherever it appeared, the things recorded in it would quickly become known to all. He had even heard that in some places, when the local government had some rules, they would even use Yang Bao to spread the news. From this, one could see just how great his influence was. At this moment, Jining was inwardly cursing Wang Zhen for being a pig. How could he have made Yang Bao legal back then? Now, the drawbacks had appeared. Alas, Wang Zhen was already a dead man. Cursing him now had no effect. It was better to think about how to resolve the matter at hand. In any case, he couldn't allow Yang Qindong to speak of the grievances and unfair treatment he had suffered. Otherwise, it would be a major blow to Dai Zong's image. Duke of loyalty and courage? Then what do you think should be done? This duke doesn't ask for anything else. You can deal with the business tax as you see fit. Even if it's 20 to 10, 10 to 1, Marquis will accept it. After all, this is for the sake of the country. But there is one condition that must be fair, and that is that this duke's business must be taxed, as well as other merchants and nobles. Otherwise, don't blame me for falling out with you. Yang Qindong kept saying that he was willing to pay an enormous price for the sake of the country, but his last request left Jining in a difficult spot. Yang Qindong was asking for fairness, and there was nothing wrong with this. However, if he really did that, he would offend countless influential people. In the past, when Yingzong was here, he only said that he wanted to collect taxes, but he never carried it out. What's wrong? Now that you've taken the throne and won the battle to defend the capital, you want to make an example out of the nobles and merchants? Isn't this a little too quick to get rid of the donkey the moment it outlived its usefulness? He thought that if he really took 30 to 1, he would lose the support of the people very quickly. Who knows how many people would go to Nanjing to seek refuge with Yingzong? This was not an outcome he wanted to see. However, they had no choice but to collect taxes. Originally, a country was divided into two, so the taxes would naturally be reduced by half. If they didn't think of other ways, once there was an emergency, it would be hard to say if there would be enough money to deal with it. Since they had to collect taxes, they could only think of a way based on the ratio. Jining had originally believed that he could use this to suppress Yang Qindong, but who would have expected that he would end up shooting himself in the foot? He could only reply with an unsightly expression. Fine, we'll do as the Duke of Loyalty says. Everyone who does business must pay taxes, whether they're merchants or nobles. As for the tax rate, why don't we set it at 100 to 1? 100 to 1, this was indeed a very low rate. This was also because the resumption of the business tax required a buffer. But in reality, this was not a very low rate for merchants. Merchants valued profit, and this sort of action of plundering them would most assuredly arouse the opposition of many. But at this moment, Jining did not have the time to consider such things. He only knew that if he did not reach an agreement with Yang Qindong, it would be even more difficult to raise the issue of collecting taxes in the future. Well said, well said. We'll do as eunuch Jin says. As long as the other merchants pay the same taxes, I have no objections. Yang Qindong regained his smile, giving off the impression that he was very magnanimous. But Jining knew very well that this was just for show. This was because once the matter became related to all the merchants in the world, it would be impossible to raise the taxes even if they wanted to. Jining finally left, looking a little disheveled as he left. Although Yang Qindong was not even 20 years old, he gave Jining the impression that he was a little fox. It was as if this person knew how to read and already knew what he was going to say. He had already prepared countless countermeasures. He was really worried that if he continued to stay here, he would accidentally fall into the other party's trap and would have to pay a certain price. Fortunately, the trip to Yangjia village was not completely fruitless. Putting aside the agreement he had reached with Yang Qindong, when he left the village, Jining saw Ling Song, the leader of the mercenaries, waiting by the roadside. When he saw Ling Song standing by the roadside in his camouflage uniform, Jining hurriedly stopped the sedan and welcomed him with a joyful expression. Oh, it's Leader Leng. I didn't know you were waiting here. I've kept you waiting. It's fine. Leng Song said expressionlessly, I've been waiting here for eunuch Jin to fulfill my promise with you. Now that the war is over, when will the 1,000,000 tons of copper and iron that Emperor Ming promised be delivered? I've already prepared the advanced firearms that you requested. When he heard that the advanced firearms were already prepared, Jin Ying's face lit up with joy. Well said, well said. The 1,000,000 tons of copper and iron have already been prepared. But how will we transport them out? That's simple. You can use the Yang family's commercial transportation system to transport them out. I've already discussed this with the Duke of Loyalty, Leng Song said. Hearing that this had already been arranged, Jining nodded in agreement. All right, then I'll hand them over to the Duke of Loyalty. Oh, right, when will we be able to obtain the advanced firearms that Leader Ling mentioned? Knowing that this was what Jining was concerned about, Ling Song said without hesitation, when the copper and iron are transported out of the capital, it will be time to hand over the advanced firearms. Oh, right, there's one more thing that needs to be discussed with eunuch Jin. This time, we've repelled the Walla's army, but we've also communicated with them. We'll be doing business with the Walla and have handed this matter over to the Duke of Loyalty. We'll have to trouble eunuch Jin to take care of this matter. Of course, once this matter is settled, if eunuch Jin has any personal requests in the future, I'll put in a good word for you in front of our leader. Leng Song said this expressionlessly, but it was rather grating to Jin Ying's ears. Leader Leng, you're doing this for this eunuch's sake. The Walla just had a fierce battle with our great Ming. It doesn't seem right for us to be doing business with them now, does it? Of course it doesn't. That's why it's us mercenaries doing business with the Walla. It has nothing to do with your great Ming. We're just borrowing your path. What's wrong? Does eunuch Jin have a problem with this? At the end of his speech, Leng Song's face became very serious, as if he was very angry. No, of course there's no problem with this eunuch here. It's just that this matter is too big. This eunuch still needs to report this matter to His Majesty and let His Majesty make a decision. Jining wasn't foolish enough to offend the mercenaries, so she brought up Dai Zong's name. It's fine. This leader will still stay in the capital with my brothers for a few days, so we can listen to what your Ming Emperor has to say. But if Ming Emperor doesn't give us a satisfactory answer by the time we leave, then I'm sorry, but I can't guarantee that we won't accept the mission when someone else pays us money to deal with the great Ming. How could Leng Song not see that Jining was delaying? Since that was the case, he took the initiative to propose a deadline. Jining could tell that there was another meaning behind his words. Leader Leng, you mean that the mercenaries won't attack our great Ming? It's not that they won't attack, but that Ming Emperor has agreed to our conditions, so he will naturally take care of his business partners. Unless someone is willing to pay several times the price to deal with you, we won't accept the mission. Leng Song nodded and then shook his head. In short, he had thrown out the benefits, but he didn't say that he was dead set. Good. If that's the case, Ming Emperor should be able to agree. Jining heard another meaning in his words. She had long heard of the high cost of hiring mercenaries. If it was several times the price, there probably weren't many people who could afford it. With these conditions, it shouldn't be difficult to convince Zhu Qiyu. Your Ming Emperor should have agreed. Once Walla does business with us, their focus might shift. At that time, I'm afraid they won't have any designs on the great Ming. Leng Song nodded as if he was giving her advice. Yes. Jining nodded, then looked left and right. When she saw that there was no one around, she carefully moved in front of Leng Song and asked, "Leader Leng, since Walla can work with your army, can we work together?" Leng Song looked at Jining alertly. "Eunuch Jin, I've said before that the Duke of Loyalty and our leader have a very good relationship. You shouldn't have such ideas. Even so, it's best that you don't say such things in the future. Otherwise, if you cause any trouble, even I won't be able to bear it. All right, I'll take my leave now." Leng Song left, leaving Jining standing there alone. Her expression changed again and again. She had previously thought that Yang Chendong's relationship with the leader of the mercenaries was not bad. However, from the probing just now, it seemed that their relationship was far better than she had imagined. It seemed that it was best not to offend this Duke of Loyalty in the future. Chapter 221. The defense of the capital was a victory. Walla's army withdrew from the capital, from the territory that had once belonged to the Great Ming. Everything seemed calm once more, and the hearts of the people in the capital calmed down. Zhu Qiyu's position as emperor had been secured. With Zhu Qiyu's position secured, Zhu Qizhen became much more impatient. In the imperial palace of Nanjing. With Zhu Qizhen's entrance, the palace was filled with eunuchs and palace maids, and it was bustling with activity. Moreover, Nanjing had originally been the capital of the Ming dynasty, so it had been extremely prosperous, allowing the southern imperial court of the Great Ming to quickly establish itself. Many officials who had come from the capital were placed in important positions, and with the 6 bureaus in Nanjing, it didn't take long for the various departments to begin their normal operations. But Zhu Qizhen was not satisfied with all this, because he had just received news from the embroidered uniform guard. With Yang Chendong's intervention, the defense of the capital had been won, and Tile had retreated, allowing the Great Ming to once more return to peace. When Walla's army had approached the capital, many officials had analyzed that Zhu Qiyu would find it very difficult to defend the capital with the soldiers he had. And once the capital fell, Zhu Qiyu, the new emperor, would have nowhere to go, and the officials who followed him would naturally fall apart. Thus, it would be time for Zhu Qizhen to unify the world. At that time, he would immediately head north. If he could defeat Tile's army and take back the capital of the Great Ming dynasty, he would be able to completely erase the humiliation of Tu Mu's defeat. He might even become a famous sovereign of his generation. But before this dream could even begin, it was already over. When he learned that the capital had been saved and that Walla had retreated, Zhu Qizhen felt a suffocating feeling in his heart that made him extremely uncomfortable. "Your Majesty." Qiao Jixiang, the head eunuch of the ceremony directorate, who was gradually grasping power and even replacing Wang Zhen, saw that Emperor Ying's complexion was extremely unsightly and softly asked. This call brought Zhu Qizhen's mind back to reality, and when he saw that it was Qiao Jixiang who had called him, he couldn't help but ask, "Does Great Companion have something to say?" Zhu Qizhen addressed Qiao Jixiang as grand partner, just like how he addressed Wang Zhen as Mr. It had to be said that a leopard couldn't change its spots. In the Battle of Tumu Fortress, he was implicated by Wang Zhen and suffered a lot. If it wasn't for Yang Chendong's timely intervention, he would have become a captive. However, after he became the emperor again, he still put the eunuchs around him in important positions. Perhaps he was used to it. Perhaps this was the rule of the Ming dynasty. Only by using eunuchs in important positions could the emperor enjoy the right to speak. "Your Majesty, the Count of Loyalty played an important role in the defense of the capital, and his appearance ruined Your Majesty's plans. Your Majesty, do you want this subject to send someone to the capital? As long as something happens to him and the news is sent to the Walla, it probably won't be long before they attack the border again, and Your Majesty's chance will come." Qiao Jixiang had not forgotten the humiliation he had received from the Yang family guards outside the Yang family manor. He had been looking for an opportunity to take revenge. Zhu Qizhen was really moved for a moment. His wish was to reunite the Great Ming dynasty, and Yang Chendong had undoubtedly become a strong wall, blocking his dream. If something happened to this person, the situation would probably change very quickly. In this way, his chance might really appear. His heart was moved, but he concluded that last time he only listened to Wang Zhen and did not listen to the words of the officials. This time, Zhu Qizhen learned his lesson and did not immediately express his opinion. He only nodded and said, "How about this? Call the Minister of War, Kuang Yi. I have something to ask him." Yes. Chao Jixiang knew that the emperor had listened to his words. He must have called Kuang Yi to ask about the feasibility of the matter. After he agreed, he turned and walked out. He personally went to Kuang Ye's residence to pass on the decree. Although the new palace had just been built, there were many eunuchs who followed Chao Jixiang to Nanjing. At least, things like passing on the decree did not require the head eunuch to do it personally. However, Chao Jixiang still came. When he appeared in Kuang Ye's residence, the Minister of War was really shocked. "Minister Kuang, the emperor has summoned you to the palace. He has something to ask you, please." After seeing Kuang Yi, Chao Jixiang tried his best to show an acceptable smile. Ever since Wang Zhen's incident, Kuang Yi and the other important officials, especially those who had survived the Tuma rebellion, had always hated eunuchs. This time, when they saw Chao Jixiang personally come to pass on the decree, they were also unhappy. However, since the emperor had a decree, they had to obey. He changed into an official's robe and followed Chao Jixiang and the others out of Kuang Ye's residence. However, just as they left the residence, Chao Jixiang changed his expression and walked up to them and said in a low voice, "Minister Kuang, this time the emperor wants to ask about the matter of Count Zhongdan Yang Qindong. This eunuch suggests to the emperor to get rid of this person and cut off one of Prince Cheng's arms. Minister Kuang, please be careful with your words." After saying this, Chao Jixiang turned and walked into his palanquin. He had already reminded Kuang Yi, and he believed that Kuang Yi would know what to say. He left Kuang Yi alone in his palanquin and thought about the cause and effect of this matter with a grave expression. Yang Qindong had saved Kuang Ye's life. If they were officials in the same court, they should have been very close. However, because Prince Cheng became the Dai Zong, he came to Nanjing to be an official. Two emperors ruling at the same time. It sounded like a simple sentence, but there were too many things involved in it. Take Yang Qindong for example. As the Minister of War, Kuang Yi had his own sources of information. He already knew that this person was first given the title of Marquis Zhongdan, and then given the title of Duke Zhongdan for his great service in the defense of the capital. However, Chao Jixiang still called him Count Zhongdan. From this, it could be seen that some of the decrees of the Dai Zone were not accepted by the Ying Zone. They used to be officials in the same court, but now that they were serving different masters, the relationship between them had become a big problem. Kuang Yi had expected that they would meet on the battlefield sooner or later, but he had not expected it to come so quickly, and the first person to be his savior, Yang Qindong. Not to mention that Yang Qindong couldn't be repaid for saving his life, he couldn't let anything happen to Yang Qindong now. Otherwise, Yingzong might not be able to stabilize his position in Nanjing. He had just resettled his home in Nanjing, and he might have to move again. No matter how he thought about it, it seemed impossible. In the palanquin, Kuang Yi made up his mind. By the time he reached the imperial palace, Kuang Yi had already made up his mind. After entering the palace and seeing the Yingzong, he first kneeled and bowed before slowly getting up. "Beloved official Kuang, you should have heard that we won the defense of the capital. Right now, the capital must be very lively, and everyone should be celebrating." As soon as he saw Kuang Yi, Yingzong's face showed a sorrowful expression. He seemed to remember the scene where everyone escaped from the Tuma castle under the protection of Yang Qindong and the mercenaries he hired. Yes. The Duke of Zhongdan blocked the entrance of the Walla and guarded the northern gate of the Great Ming Dynasty, giving us more time to recruit, and manage the soldiers. It is a blessing for the country. Kuang Yi said these high-sounding words while paying attention to Zhu Qizhen's expression. Hearing Kuang Yi praise Yang Qindong like this, Zhu Qizhen's face showed a trace of displeasure. The Duke of Zhongdan saved the emperor and is an important official that I rely on. But why did he stay in the capital in the north and not come back? Now, he helped King Yu block the Walla and made his name known all over the world. Isn't this going against me? Because of this, someone advised me to invite the Duke of Zhongdan to Nanjing. If he doesn't agree, we can use extreme measures. Beloved official Kuang, what do you think? When he asked this question, Zhu Qizhen's eyes shone with a cold light, as if he wanted to see through Kuang Ye's heart at this moment. Fortunately, Kuang Yi was prepared. After hearing Zhu Qizhen's words, he did not panic. Instead, he pretended to be deep in thought, first nodding and then shaking his head. Beloved official, what do you mean? Seeing Kuang Yi nod and shake his head, Zhu Qizhen was confused for a moment. Your Majesty, in this official's view, it is not impossible to invite the Duke of Zhongdan to Nanjing, but I'm afraid that he won't be willing to come. The immortal abode, heaven beyond heaven, and I heard that King Yu promised him to set up a bank of the Yang clan in the capital. With so many transactions, I really don't dare to think that he will give them up. As for forcing him to come, I'm afraid that the embroidered uniform guards and the Eastern faction guards won't be able to do it. Your Majesty, please don't forget that the Duke of Zhongdan has the world's most elite mercenaries at his side. If this is done and it doesn't happen in the end, it will be equivalent to offending the Duke of Zhongdan. This official asks Your Majesty, are you ready to fall out with King Yu now? As soon as Kuang Yi opened his mouth, he suddenly asked a few questions, which stunned Zhu Qizhen. He asked suspiciously, Beloved official, what do you mean? Why do you invite the Duke of Zhongdan to fall out with King Yu? Seeing that Zhu Qizhen began to follow his train of thought, Kuang Yi pretended to be very excited and said, Your Majesty, think about it. What is the reason why we can coexist peacefully with King Yu now? Isn't it all because of the mediation of the Duke of Zhongdan in the capital? If something happens to him, there will be no barrier between us and King Yu. Now that the Walla has retreated, King Yu may gather all his forces to deal with us. Even now, the surrounding guards are not all controlled by us. As the Minister of War, this official does not dare to tell Your Majesty that the number of troops we can fight now is less than 50,000. According to the information he had received, 80,000 soldiers from the Bureau of Imperial Guards had been dispatched to the capital to rescue the emperor. If these people suddenly turn around and attack Nanjing, this official can't guarantee that we can win the battle. Chapter 222. There was no need for Kuang Yi to say anything else. He believed that Zhu Qizhen would be able to figure it out. Sure enough, when Yingzong said this, his expression changed again and again. Perhaps it was because of the defeat at the Tumu fortress, but he was still traumatized by war. He was truly afraid when he heard about it. Furthermore, with Kuang Ye's analysis, how could he still think about touching Yang Chendong? Not only that, he also had to ensure the safety of this person so that he could act as a barrier between him and King Yu. Good, I will remember Minister Kuang's words. It was I who did not think it through. Zhu Qizhen seemed like a completely different person. He was completely different from the emperor who had a murderous look in his eyes. Seeing this, Kuang Yi finally calmed down. This time, not only did he want to repay Yang Chendong for saving his life, he also did not have the confidence to do anything to this loyal duke. Think about it, even the elite cavalry of the Walla were defeated by this person. How could he be so easy to deal with? If he couldn't touch the other party, he would be provoked to point the saber at Nanjing. If that was the case, he was afraid that this time, he really had nowhere to hide. Whether it was to repay the debt of gratitude or for himself. Kuang Ye's words completely dispelled Zhu Qizhen's thoughts about Yang Chendong. At this moment, Yang Chendong in the capital did not know that someone wanted to kill him. Of course, even if he knew, he might not care. With Leng Feng and the others in charge of his safety, he did not take any assassination seriously. For days had passed since the Walla retreated. Today was the day that the mercenaries retreated. With Leng Song as the leader and battalion commander Xiao Feng as the second, the two of them led the 200 mercenaries of the 1st and 2nd companies out of the capital. The ones left behind were the 3rd company led by Teng Shan and the 4th company led by Wu Sheng. These two people were left behind to replace Xiao Feng. This was because Yang Chendong intended to promote them. By his side, he could learn more things. In the future, when the system grew stronger and needed more high-ranking officers, there would not be a situation where there was no one to replace them. When Commander Leng Song left, he took with him the 1 million tons of copper and iron that Dai Zong had given him. For this matter, he had hired several thousand commoners to push the carts out of the capital. After paying so much, Dai Zong received an item and a promise. The object was a Type 81 rifle and 30 rounds of ammunition. The promise was a guarantee that the mercenaries would not easily attack Dai Zong. After paying so much, all he got in return was a gun and a guarantee. In the eyes of others, it seemed like he had lost out, and it was a huge loss. But in Dai Zong's eyes, it was worth it. With the first advanced firearm, with the ability of the Great Ming Empire's firearms department, they should be able to make a second one. Once he had this kind of advanced firearm, he would not be far from running amok in the world. He would be able to reunite the Great Ming Empire. A guarantee was equally important. At the very least, he didn't have to worry about others using mercenaries to deal with him. In order to obtain all of this, he only had to pay 1 million tons of copper and iron that he wouldn't be able to use in a short period of time. Of course, it was worth it. Perhaps this was what it meant to turn waste into treasure. Dai Zong was still in a state of ecstasy. He ordered people to hurry up and develop the Type 81 assault rifle so that they could produce results as soon as possible and benefit from it. At this time, the Yang family bank, which was opposite the Immortal Residence and Sky Beyond Sky, had opened for business. Since it was Dong Shuai who made the move, it would definitely be extraordinary. 3 days ago, the Yang family bank had started to advertise the opening of the bank. There was a large introduction of the bank's function, and it promised that if money was deposited in the bank, one would be able to obtain extremely high interest rates. At the same time, it also sent out an invitation to ambitious businessmen who wanted to do business but lacked money. As long as you had something, whether it was land or houses, you could use it as collateral. Even if you didn't, you could also borrow money from the bank through a joint guarantee from 5 households. It also introduced the interest rates for depositing money in detail and also talked about some ways for people to borrow money. When the Yang family bank released the advertisement, it instantly attracted the attention of many people. In particular, the advertisement also said that in the first 3 days of the bank's opening, as long as someone deposited money, they would be given all kinds of small gifts. The more money they deposited, the better the gifts would be. For example, some people didn't have much extra money in their family and could only deposit 2 taels of silver at most. But even so, they could still receive a packet of toilet paper. The market price of this item was at least 2 taels of silver. In this way, it was equivalent to receiving 2 taels of silver for free. As for the 10 families with the highest savings, each of them would be given a divine object mirror. The first family would also receive 5 sets of extremely exquisite glass cups. Whether it was given away or sold, these were all extremely popular goods. With these as a catalyst, on the morning of the Yang family bank's opening, there was a crowd that blocked the nearby streets. Fortunately, there were people from the warden's office of the 5 cities here to take care of security, so there weren't any accidents. But when the time came, many people wanted to rush into the bank to deposit their money. There were also some people who stood outside the door to watch. Suddenly, the black cloth covering the Yang family bank was pulled away. Waves of golden light blinded many people's eyes. Originally, when they saw that the exterior of the Yang family bank was covered with a black cloth, some people thought that it was like the opening of the immortal abode. They thought that the exterior should be covered with glass, which made it look bright and transparent, and also made it look high-end and classy. But who knew that the moment the black cloth was removed, there was indeed a thick glass, but inside the glass, there was an uncountable amount of gold that couldn't be calculated. With so much gold placed together, it emitted the color of brass. Under the illumination of the sun, coupled with the reflection of the sun, it flashed a golden light, giving people the feeling that they were looking at a mountain of gold. Just as everyone was still shocked by the scene in front of them, Yang Chendong personally appointed the general manager of the Yang family bank. His cousin Yang Fu, with a big belly, walked out under the protection of 2 men in camouflage uniforms. With a big belly and a kind smile, Yang Fu was now a person who had experienced big scenes. Back when he was in Jianghu, it was only because he trusted Yang Chendong that he sponsored a few times and cooperated with him a few times. Who knew that he would earn more and more money, and his value would also increase. Later on, when he came to the capital with Yang Chendong and managed the immortal abode and heavens beyond heaven, he increased his knowledge. In the past, when he saw a rank 7 official in Jianghu, his legs would tremble. Now, even if he saw a duke, a marquis, a count, or a rank 2 or 3 official in the imperial court, he could still act very naturally. It was because of Yang Fu's ability and his ability to adapt to changes in the environment that Yang Chendong handed the heavy responsibility of the general manager of the bank to him this time. At this moment, Yang Fu was like the Minister of Finance, controlling this business giant wheel. It could be seen that as long as Yang Fu didn't have any other thoughts and was able to follow in Yang Chendong's footsteps, his future achievements would be limitless. The moment Yang Fu stood out, he immediately attracted everyone's attention. Enjoying the attention of everyone, Yang Fu stood there for more than 10 breaths without saying a word. However, when the crowd quietened down because of his appearance, he coughed heavily and pointed forward. "Everyone, do you see that? The Yang family bank has sufficient gold and silver. This is where our confidence lies, and it is also a way to protect our depositors. You don't have to worry about whether your money will be wasted if you deposit it in the Yang family bank, because we have this gold as a guarantee. If you can't get your money back, then this gold will be yours. Everyone will make a profit and won't lose anything. Okay, we want to deposit money, we want to deposit money." The supporters, who had been hiding in the crowd, immediately shouted loudly. At the same time, they raised various amounts of silver and squeezed forward. It gave people the feeling that if they were a step late, they wouldn't have the chance to deposit money. The crowd was excited, and those who held the silver couldn't wait any longer. At this moment, there was no need for Yang Fu to make a long-winded speech, nor was there a need for him to instigate anything. The result was obvious. Satisfied, he turned around and walked into the bank. Following him was the army of savings behind him. In order to ensure that the business was done smoothly, they didn't let people wait for too long and showed efficiency. The entire Yang family bank took up a total of 3,000 square meters. With just this one move, they had to open up 5 or 6 large shops in succession before they could complete the task. It was all thanks to the previous battle that the capital was in a state of panic. This was why Yang Chendong was able to buy these properties at a cheap price. Now, they were all put to good use. In the 3,000 square meter hall, there were a total of 20 counters for depositing and withdrawing money, and 20 large bulletproof glasses were placed there. There were many bulletproof glasses in the warehouse that were prepared for important headquarters and vehicles. This time, Yang Chendong took out some of them. Since this was a bank, when it came to dealing with money, it couldn't be too much to guard against. In short, Yang Chendong wanted to show that not only could he guarantee his own safety, he also wanted to make sure that the scene was grand, so that every depositor could feel at ease and at ease. The red ropes leading to the 20 counters had been tied in advance to ensure that each passage was orderly. And there were enough drinks on the side of the passage. Although the ingredients were far inferior to those sold in the immortal abode, this was still the first time the common folk had tasted something so good. For a moment, the demand for the drinks couldn't meet the demand. The hall was bustling with activity, with people coming and going. However many people went out, they would let in as many people as they wanted to, so that there would always be at least 500 customers in the hall. But even the depositors who had deposited money left empty-handed. It seemed extremely relaxed, but at the very least, it was completely different from when they had arrived with money in their hands and arms. But in reality, they were already carrying banknotes of various denominations. Chapter 223. These banknotes were made of carefully selected coin paper. A picture of a soaring dragon was printed on it, and the colors were balanced. More importantly, these banknotes not only had words on them to prevent counterfeiting, but they were also reprinted and suppressed. On the surface, it was impossible to see. Only when one touched it with their hands could they feel the uneven existence. And all of this was made by Yang Chendong, who first found a lot of materials in the large warehouse. Then, he gave them to the munitions factory and printing factory in Qiqian City to jointly produce good things. Many of the processes could not be done by one person, so it was equivalent to an additional safe process. In addition, some of the processes were only available in the large warehouse. As a result, it was impossible for others to forge them. And Yang Chendong firmly believed that with his arrival and the advanced knowledge he brought, science would develop step by step. The gap between the current level of science and technology would only grow bigger and bigger. It would be even harder for others to find an opportunity to catch up and surpass. There were free drinks to drink, free gifts to receive, and countless amounts of gold as guarantees. In addition to the light and simple banknotes, the Yang family bank became popular on the first day. It opened until the sky turned dark, and when it had to be forced to close, it had already absorbed a total of 7 million taels of silver. The good news was quickly sent to the Yang family manor 15 li south of the city. Without the danger of war, the Duke of Loyalty, Yang Chendong, returned here. For him, it was more reassuring to not live in a territory controlled by others. Without the threat of war, Yang Chendong spent the past few days with Hu Yan and Xiao Yin in addition to dealing with his daily work. In Hu Yan's words, Lu Lang was not young anymore. Her older brother and some of her friends had already become fathers when they were at his age. Since he had such a large family property, of course, he had to have enough people to carry on. So, after discussing with Xiao Yin, he pestered Yang Chendong every day when he was free, in order to give birth to the next generation as soon as possible. Yang Chendong really didn't understand. He was less than 20 years old. Why was he in such a hurry to have a child? His parents' bodies hadn't fully developed yet. What was the benefit of having a child in a hurry? Fortunately, Lady Xue and Lady Xiang were busy with their work. They were arranging the scene where the god of war Yang Chendong defeated the Walla's army. Besides, people who worked in the arts did not want to have children too early. Otherwise, their bodies would change. With two less people, Dong Shui could calmly deal with the two women. When Yang Si excitedly reported the good news of the 7 million yuan deposit in Yang Chendong's bank to his master, Yang Chendong, he was being fed dinner by Hu Yan and Xiao Yin. Yang Chendong was also shocked when he heard that the daily savings was 7 million taels. Good, good. It looks like the people of the Great Ming Dynasty really are rich. How about this? We have to strike while the iron is hot. Notify everyone that in the future, anyone who uses banknotes in the immortal abode or realm beyond heaven will be able to enjoy a 5% discount. Yang Chendong was stunned for a moment, but quickly reacted. He decided to add fuel to the fire. It would be best if he could get all the money in the hands of the Great Ming Dynasty's people, merchants, and nobles. If everyone used banknotes, then without him, the Great Ming Dynasty's economy would be crippled. At that time, who would dare to touch him? Yang Si left. He was excited when he came, but he was also excited when he left. After he left, Hu Yan, who was feeding him, asked with a puzzled expression, "Sixth brother, what do we need so much money for? We even have to get a 5% discount. Who knows how much less income we'll get?" Housekeeper, you're quite competent." Yang Chendong smiled and scratched the bridge of Hu Yan's nose. This was his signature gesture of intimacy with his woman. Seeing that even Hu Yan was starting to care about the business, Yang Chendong wasn't displeased at all. Instead, he said with an encouraging tone, "Using money to make transactions is really too wasteful. If this thing is passed around for a long time, it will wear and tear. That's equivalent to wasting an infinite amount of money. In addition, it's too heavy to make transactions. Sixth brother, you're doing a good deed to reduce everyone's losses. As for ourselves, didn't you say that we already have a lot of money? Doing something for the common people is something we should do." His words were dignified and righteous. Yang Chendong didn't explain that the difference in the price of silver and the quality of the silver would be the source of the profits for the Yang Bank. He also didn't say that he wanted to use this method to control the great Ming dynasty's economy. Although they were married, there were some things that he didn't want to hide from them. He was just afraid of scaring them. If he really told them about his ambition, it was possible for Hu Yan to faint from fright. Before he had enough strength or showed enough signs, Yang Qindong didn't want to scare his women and make them worry about him. All the pressure would be shouldered by himself. This was what a man should do. With Yang Qindong's decision, the news quickly spread the next day. For a time, the merchants who were still hesitating whether to deposit money in the bank were shaken. They took all the liquid funds and began to deposit in the Yang Bank, causing the turnover of the next day to exceed 8 million taels. In just 2 days, a total of 15 million taels of silver had been deposited. This was undoubtedly a major event that shook the world. Even the acting sect master, Zhu Qizhen, was shocked by this. In fact, such a result wasn't unexpected. First, the people of the Great Ming Dynasty who had just experienced the rule of Ren Xian still had some money in their hands. Second, the business strategy and promotion were in place. Third, the discount was enough. In addition, the reputation of the East Marshal had always been very good. Opposite him were his businesses, Immortal Residence and Sky Beyond Sky. The traffic there directly affected people's judgment and trust in him. Not to mention, he also had the support of the emperor. Zhu Qiyu had deposited 500,000 taels of silver. The other ministers followed suit. Naturally, this amount wasn't that shocking. But when the situation was reported to Zhu Qiyu, he was still shocked. 15 million taels. This was close to half of the Great Ming Dynasty's national treasury. This wealth belonged to one person. How could he not be shocked? The original Great Ming Dynasty's national treasury had experienced the efforts of several generations of monarchs. There was indeed some savings. However, the Great Ming Dynasty lost the Battle of Tumu and lost a lot. Later, when the two emperors ruled together, Emperor Yingzong took away some of the money. In addition, they spent a lot of money to hire mercenaries. Over time, they were only spending money. It was no wonder that the amount of money in the national treasury was gradually decreasing. In the palace, Zhu Qiyu made a difficult decision. Notify the Ministry of Revenue to calculate and collect the business tax. Disregarding everything else, just how much money could they earn from the Yang clan's bank every year with a business tax of 100 to 1? With this as bait, Dai Zong couldn't help but be tempted. He had no choice but to use some methods. Although doing so would offend some merchants and nobles, and would even cause some people to be dissatisfied, this was the only way to replenish the national treasury. Jining knew what the consequences of the emperor's decision would be, but seeing how Yang Qindong was earning so much money, they couldn't just do nothing. The country had always relied on collecting taxes to survive, and this was a matter of course. Thus, they didn't raise any objections and went to the Ministry of Revenue to pass down the decree. As the new Minister of Revenue, Jin Lian had always wanted to make some achievements, but he had never had a suitable opportunity. Now that the business tax had appeared, he knew that his opportunity had come. He immediately led a group of subordinates and quickly came up with some regulations. In just a few days, the details of the business tax were announced in the capital. Once the business tax was announced, and it was done so quickly, it immediately attracted the dissatisfaction of many merchants. How could anyone who could become a merchant be an ordinary person? Either he was smart, or he had a strong background. Collecting the business tax was tantamount to touching their interests. Because of this, an unexpected guest had come to the Yang clan manor. It wasn't exactly an unexpected guest. This person was Dong Shuai's relative, his sixth brother-in-law, Bai Peng. When his sixth sister, Yang Qin, had married into the Bai clan, the Yang clan had been in a period of decline. The status of a merchant wasn't high, and the marriage alliance had been looked down upon. However, in order to support the Yang clan, Yang Qin had resolutely chosen to marry into the Bai clan. At that time, she had indeed exchanged for a lot of money, which had helped the Yang clan for a period of time. Yang Qin had sacrificed so much, but her brothers and sisters didn't understand. Fortunately, Bai Peng and Yang Chendong had a good relationship, and they loved each other dearly. At the very least, he hadn't taken in a concubine yet. This had also gained Yang Chendong's approval. When it came to collecting goods in heavens beyond heaven, others couldn't, but the Bai clan had benefited greatly. And this time, Bai Peng had taken the initiative to come. Needless to say, he was here to discuss the imperial court's plan to collect the business tax. He had represented the majority of the merchants in the capital and coming to seek advice from Dong Shuai. He wanted to see if there was any good way to deal with it. Since his sixth brother-in-law had come, Yang Chendong naturally couldn't refuse to meet him. Not only did he meet him, he even met him in his own study. From this, one could see how solemn he was. Upon seeing Yang Chendong, even though he was his sixth brother-in-law, Bai Peng still respectfully greeted him. Duke Yang. All right, sixth brother-in-law, there's no need for you to call me Duke. Just call me Dong Shuai or sixth young master. Yang Chendong, who didn't like such formalities, chuckled and invited Bai Peng to sit across from him. All right, Dong Shuai. The imperial court's tax collection this time is clearly aimed at us merchants. With a ratio of 100 to 1, how much money will we have to pay in that year? We merchants are all opposed to it. Since they were relatives, there was no need to beat around the bush. Bai Peng raised the doubts in her heart. Yang Chendong savored the fragrant tea in his hand as he looked at Bai Peng. So they sent you here to make me stand up against the imperial court? Chapter 224. No. Seeing that Yang Chendong saw through his intention at a glance, Bai Peng hurriedly showed a flattering smile and said, We don't want to go against the imperial court, but this move is too ruthless. As the leader of the merchants, Dong Shuai should represent us and argue with them. Hearing that he had become the leader of the merchants, a title that even he didn't know, Yang Chendong suddenly laughed and said, Leader? Ha, sixth brother-in-law, don't make fun of me. I am also the Duke of Loyalty and Courage personally conferred by the Emperor of the Great Ming Dynasty. I am also a minister of the imperial court. How can I find trouble with them? No. It's not the same. Dong Shuai, who doesn't know that Walla retreated because of you, but now? They just conferred you the title of Duke and left you at home. This is clearly getting rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness. We are all saying that it is unfair for Dong Shuai. Suddenly, the teacup was put on the table heavily. Enough. Yang Chendong's face suddenly turned cold, and he said in an icy voice, Sixth brother-in-law, this duke saw that you are my brother-in-law, so I gave you face and listened to you. However, there are some things that cannot be discussed in private. Well, I am sleepy, please go back. Yang Chendong made a gesture of sending him off, and then without waiting for Bai Peng to say anything, he got up and walked to the bedroom in the backyard. It was obvious that Bai Peng was being used by someone to ask him to speak for the merchants. If they won, the merchants would naturally get benefits. Even if they lost, the unlucky ones would only be him who resisted, and those people would still be fine. It was really unexpected that Bai Peng would be willing to do such a thing. Yang Chendong suddenly left the table, and Bai Peng's face was bitter. Tiger's Mane, who was standing at the side, stretched out his hand and said politely, Boss Bai, please. Bai Peng left with some disappointment. Not long after he returned to the capital, rumors began to spread that the newly made Duke of Loyalty, Yang Chendong, was also afraid of the imperial court. Just like Jianghu, who had died for his country after being made Duke of Ing, he had become a coward. Even if someone went to the Yang manor to ask for an explanation about the imperial court's business tax collection, he didn't dare to stand out and fight for it. Even Yang Chendong, who had an uncountable amount of silver, approved of the imperial court's actions. For a moment, the other merchants had nothing to say. They had no choice but to consider the matter of paying the taxes. Once the news came out, it quickly spread to the palace. When Jining received the report from the secret agent of the Brocade Guard, she was overjoyed. This Duke of Loyalty is a man of his word. He promised me before, and he can fulfill his promise very well. However, in this way, his status in the eyes of the merchants will be greatly reduced. If there is a chance to take care of this person, I don't think there will be many people who will speak up for him. Ji Ning was overjoyed. At the same time, she waved her hand to summon a trusted eunuch and said, "Go, tell Commander Lu Gui that there are some things that can be taken care of." In a dilapidated temple on the outskirts of the capital, weeds that were half the height of a man grew everywhere. Even though the weather was getting colder, the weeds still hadn't withered. They displayed their strong vitality. In the temple, weeds, and the occasional chirping of an unknown bird in the sky. This place gave off a desolate feeling. Logically speaking, there should be no signs of human habitation. However, 3 miles away from the temple, there were more than 100 people dressed in black. They were almost the same height. Their eyes were cold and indifferent. They were like human-shaped machines, without the slightest hint of emotion. They were the East Faction Guards. Because it was located to the north of Dong and Gate, now East Faction Alley in the north of Wangfujing Street, it was named the East Faction Guards. The function of the East Faction Guards was to investigate and defy evil and share power with the embroidered uniform guards. Relatively speaking, the East Faction Guards and the embroidered uniform guards didn't belong to each other. However, because the embroidered uniform guards were established by Ming Qingzu and Zhu Di, and only those who weren't strong enough could enter, their overall quality was higher than the embroidered uniform guards. Over time, they had a feeling that they were above the embroidered uniform guards. Of course, the East Faction Guards couldn't order the embroidered uniform guards around. Similarly, the embroidered uniform guards couldn't order the East Faction Guards around. They each had their own authority and did different things that belonged to them. But this time, 100 East Faction protectors had suddenly appeared. Such a big battle formation was just to besiege a run-down temple. From this, it could be seen that there must be someone important here. The 100 East Faction Guards dressed in black walked forward with light steps. They tried their best not to make any noise as they walked. However, there were too many people. With so many people, it was inevitable that they wouldn't make any noise. For example, one of them accidentally stepped on a withered branch and made a slight cracking sound. Once the sound was heard, the other guards nearby all looked over. Then, the leader shook his head. Although the sound was soft, it was equivalent to exposing the target of their encirclement. Attack together. Surround this place. Don't let him escape. After the leader called out softly, the 100 Eastern Faction Guards immediately sped up and formed a huge encirclement around the small temple. The 100 men in black stopped at almost the same time. They stared at the small temple in front of them that didn't make any noise. They didn't move for a long time. They stood there for the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. When the atmosphere reached its peak, the leader raised his hand. A small crossbow appeared in the hands of all the men in black. They aimed at the only exit of the small temple. "Lord Ji, you've already been surrounded. I know you have some tricks up your sleeve, but can you face 100 of us alone? If you don't come out, we'll have to set fire to the temple." The leader stared straight at the entrance of the small temple. During this process, he didn't even dare to blink. His voice spread out, and in the quiet little temple, it was very clear and bright. As his voice rang out, the sound of footsteps suddenly came from the originally silent small temple. Ha ha ha, Chen Guan must have been unable to hold himself back and spilled the beans. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to find this place. His laughter was very bright and clear. In an instant, it spread far and wide. When the leader of the black-robed men heard this, a faint smile appeared on his face. Chen Guan hadn't lied. Ji Guang really was here. Ji Guang, the former commander of the embroidered uniform guards, was a 4th-rank official. At the same time, he was Wang Zhen's trusted aide. Ever since Wang Zhen was killed in front of the Tuma Castle, Ji Guang had disappeared. Along with him, the money and wealth that Wang Zhen had obtained through various means over the years had disappeared. Ji Ning, who had regained power, didn't care that much about Ji Guang's disappearance. However, he couldn't accept the fact that the treasure had disappeared as well. It was the same at any time. If you wanted to succeed, you needed money first. Only when those who followed you benefited from it would more and more people would gather. Since Ji Guang had disappeared along with the treasures, no one would believe that they had nothing to do with it. If they found Ji Guang, they might be able to find out where the treasure was buried. For this matter, Jining was very attentive. He even found a random reason to take down the head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate, Chen Guan. Chen Guan was also one of Wang Zhen's trusted aides. He was also in charge of the Imperial Horse Directorate, a weapon of mass destruction. When he saw Jining, the head eunuch of the Ceremony Directorate, he rarely looked him in the eye. However, all of this ended with Wang Zhen's death and Ning Zong's defeat. Jining made the right choice at the first moment and relied on Zhu Qiyu. Not long after, Zhu Qiyu ascended the throne and Jining held great power. He also obtained the mission of reorganizing the embroidered uniform guards of the Eastern Faction Guards and the entire group of eunuchs from Zhu Qiyu. Once the power of the court was in his hands, all people submitted. Chen Guan was one of the eunuchs who changed his attitude very quickly. He immediately chose to pledge his loyalty to Jining. Indeed, he disappeared from the list of eunuchs to be purged first. However, as Dai Zong's position became more and more stable, Jining's power grew with each passing day. In the end, he was caught by Jining. Chen Guan, who had been caught, couldn't understand. He had already offered up all his wealth and was only given a small courtyard in the capital. Why had he not been let go? However, only after entering the embroidered uniform guard's prison did he realize that he had been implicated. Jining wanted to capture Ji Guang, but had no clues, so he had been brought here. When he had first entered the prison, Chen Guan had displayed a hint of stubbornness. He really hadn't said anything. This was how smart he was. He believed that if he said anything, it would mean his death. But when Jining personally met with him in the prison, everything changed. Jining promised that as long as Chen Guan told her where Ji Guang was hiding and he successfully found Wang Zhen's wealth, she would restore him to his position as head eunuch of the Imperial Horse Directorate. Not only would he be able to live, he would also be able to regain his lofty position and hold great power. Chen Guan had no choice but to seriously consider all of this. After an intense mental struggle, he finally revealed that Ji Guang might be hiding in a rundown temple on the outskirts of the capital. That place had originally been a secret meeting point. This was also one of Wang Zhen's cleverness. A crafty rabbit had 3 burrows. Wang Zhen had once worried that he would one day fall and be targeted, so he had a place to hide. The temple appeared to be in ruins, but it had actually been remodeled underground. Not only could it hide people, it had also prepared a lot of food. It could guarantee that one wouldn't have to worry about survival for a month or even longer. After receiving this news, the operation at the Eastern Faction headquarters took place. As expected, they found the former commander of the embroidered uniform guard, Ji Guang. Chapter 225. Ji Guang took the initiative to step forward. The East Faction protector walked forward and tied him up tightly. Regarding this, Ji Guang did not resist at all from beginning to end. Wang Zhen had put him in an important position, so he was very skilled. Usually, 5 or 6 big men would not be able to get close to him. However, this time, he was facing 100 East Faction protectors. If he had to fight, he would undoubtedly be looking for trouble. Moreover, Ji Guang had been hiding for a long time. Perhaps it would be a relief if someone found him. The small temple was searched carefully. However, other than some food and water, nothing else was found. In the end, only he was secretly brought to the imperial prison. When Jining heard the news that Ji Guang had been captured, she came to the imperial prison. She saw Ji Guang, who seemed to be in a good mood, chatting with Chen Guan, who had surrendered. "Hee, the 2 of you, I didn't expect that the 3 of us would meet again here. Are you surprised?" Jining said this because she was feeling emotional. In the past, when Wang Zhen was still around, they actually had many opportunities to meet. However, because their standpoints were different and Jin Ying's performance was very mediocre, it was difficult for her to be taken seriously. Chen Guan and Ji Guang did not speak. They did not know how to respond. Jin Ying did not mind. Instead, she continued to enlighten them. Perhaps this is how the affairs of the world change. Yesterday, you were high and mighty. Today, you may become a prisoner. Therefore, the most important thing is to enjoy the best time and recognize the situation. Your former master, Wang Zhen, is already dead. Perhaps he has already gone to hell. There is no need for you to follow him because there is still a bright future and good days ahead of you. How about it? Follow me. As long as you become my people, no one will make things difficult for you in the future. Jin Ying spoke in a bewitching tone. If others want to follow me, they have to think of many ways to achieve it. However, I have high hopes for the two of you. I am willing to take the initiative and give you a chance. As long as you tell me where Wang Zhen's treasures are hidden, you will naturally be reinstated. Isn't that the best? Of course, you can also choose not to say anything and continue to be loyal to your deceased former master. If that's the case, you won't have an easy life for the rest of your lives. I don't think there's a need for me to continue explaining to you what the imperial prison has to offer. If you want, you can have a taste of the 108 types of torture. Ha ha ha. Sticks and candy. Chen Guan's expression changed when he saw the two extreme techniques. Although Ji Guang didn't show anything on the surface, he was also conflicted in his heart. All of them had once held great power in their hands. It was precisely because of this that they had enjoyed wonderful things. Now that they had lost them, that feeling was the most painful. It had to be said that Jin Ying understood people's weaknesses too well. After saying this, he didn't immediately force them to make a choice. Instead, he laughed and left. After he left, there were still people who served them good wine and dishes, treating them like VIPs. This was one of Jin Ying's methods. Using sugar-coated bullets to bombard these two people and let them see the beauty of life. This way, their will to die would become weaker and weaker, and in the end, they would be used by him. In the immortal abode of the capital, the emergency production of the War Walla play had already begun. Madame Xue and Madame Xiang had personally witnessed how Yang Qindong had killed all his enemies with a wave of his finger. Naturally, it was much easier to arrange the plot. That was why the plot could be arranged in such a short time and presented in front of everyone. Yang Qindong had defeated the powerful Walla army. Everyone in the capital knew about this, and even a child of 2 or 3 years old would remember the name of the Dong Shui. But as for the exact details, many people didn't know. Now that the play had been produced, everyone finally understood what had happened. Madame Xue and Madame Xiang had intentionally added in a few mythological elements, making the play even more entertaining and allowing even more people to understand the power and mystery of the Duke of Loyalty. With the play, the immortal abode, which had already been a difficult place to obtain, became even more popular. In order to catch a glimpse of the war god, some high officials and nobles even offered several times the market price just to get a seat. This flattery made Yang Qindong's limelight unparalleled for a while. Outside the Yang clan manor, an endless stream of young people came to join him every day. These people had come to join Yang Qindong after watching the war god battle Walla play. In their eyes, the Duke of Loyalty was a great hero. Good men should follow in the footsteps of such a person, so that they wouldn't have wasted their lives. Outside the manor, people would come to join him every day, willingly renouncing their original identities to join Yang Qindong, even if it was just a servant. But Yang Qindong didn't accept any of this. If he wanted to develop, he naturally couldn't do without people. There were indeed many men who were knowledgeable and had good physical fitness among those who sought refuge from Yang Qindong. However, Yang Qindong did not want any of them. For no other reason than the fact that he didn't know much about these people. Who knew if some of them were spies sent by Dai Zong or even Ing Zong? Even though there weren't many secrets in the Yang clan manor, Yang Qindong didn't want to waste his energy on guarding against the people around him. He still had too many things to do, such as arranging for Tingshan to escort goods to the Walla. After meeting with Yeshan last time, they decided on an important matter of trade. Now that the Walla's army had retreated from the Ming Dynasty's territory, the matter of trade naturally began. The only difference was that the ones in charge this time were the mercenaries led by Ting Shan. First of all, the mercenaries didn't have to pay taxes to Zhu Qiyu. Even Jining and the others didn't have the guts to collect taxes, but the amount of money involved was still considerable. Second of all, not only did Ting Shan want to trade with the Walla, but he also wanted to take the opportunity to observe the geography of the grasslands and draw a map. One day, when the battle was decided, all of this would be of great use. Thirdly, in order for the Yang faction's new army to become an invincible cavalry army, they would need more war horses. And if one wanted to buy and sell war horses, the grasslands were undoubtedly the cheapest and most reasonable. With these 3 points, Ting Shan had already started to prepare for trade with the Walla. Since it was trade, the escorts had to be on the ground. The main thing was that the merchant caravan was large. And Yang Qindong was using the Bai clan's merchant caravan. Since the last time Bai Peng wanted to ask Yang Qindong to come forward on behalf of the merchants in the capital but failed to do so, the next day, Yang Qin, the sixth sister, brought her husband, Bai Peng, to Yang village to ask for forgiveness. Bai Peng had been drinking with the merchants and was picked up, so he volunteered to come to the Yang clan manor. However, Yang Qindong very calmly rejected him. After that, Bai Peng was naturally ridiculed by the merchants. When he returned home, he was seen by his wife, Yang Qin, and told her the whole story. When Yang Qin found out about the situation, she immediately infuriated her husband. This was the first time the virtuous Yang Qin had publicly questioned her husband. At that time, Bai Peng was naturally very angry. He was actually looked down upon by a woman, which made him feel like he had lost all face. However, after listening to his wife's words, he realized that he had been used. If he went to find Yang Qindong, he would be viewed as an enemy by the great Ming dynasty. This was a win-win situation. On the other hand, his friends who drank with him could be exempted from the tax and save a lot of money. Knowing that he had been used, and more importantly, he had offended the Duke of Loyalty, Bai Peng was filled with regret. The next morning, he came to the Yang clan manor with his wife. Since sixth sister had come forward, Yang Qindong had to meet her. Not only that, Yang Qindong also expressed his position and gave enough face to sixth sister and gave enough benefits to the Bai family. Yang Qindong said, "Sixth sister, sixth brother-in-law, as a merchant, you are protected by the country, so you should pay taxes to the country for your original interests. Otherwise, the country is unstable. How can you do stable business? So paying taxes is normal, and even necessary." It must be said that this was not Yang Qindong's noble character, but his sincere words. Not for other reasons, but because the merchants in Qiqian City had to pay taxes, and the tax paid was far higher than the ratio of 100 to 1, but within the range of 50 to 1, referring to the profit. Even so, there were still countless people who went to the newly established tax bureau to apply for a business license every day. So it could be seen that the benefits were still very big. Qiqian City was still too small, and the taxes of the merchants would not be of much use to the rapidly growing Yangxia faction. But in the long run, it was all worth it. Think about it. In the future, the territory that they occupy will increase, the population will increase, and there will be more businesses. At that time, the business tax will play a huge role. With such thoughts, how could he not support Zhu Qiyu's decision to collect taxes? At the very least, he had to let the people here get used to it first. As for himself, he had to pay what should be paid, and what he could avoid was best. No matter what, Bai Peng was his sixth brother-in-law, and more importantly, the Bai family had some status among the merchants in the capital. In order to build a strong system, or even a country, not only did they need an army that could fight tough battles, they also needed to recruit all kinds of talents. As such, Yang Qindong decided to pull in the Bai family. While sixth sister and sixth brother-in-law were here, he told them that the mercenaries wanted to trade with the Walla, and that they needed to hire a large merchant caravan. "I've decided to recommend the Bai family's merchant caravan. Is there any problem?" You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.